What's up, and welcome to the first ever A to Z Sports Mega Mock Draft. All 32 picks in the first round. I'm Austin Stanley of A to Z Sports Nashville, along with Ryan Roberts, host of the best pod available and the A to Z Sports Notre Dame YouTube channels, and Kyle Krabs of the brand new looking A to Z Sports Film Room YouTube channel and A to Z Sports Dolphins. Throughout these 32 picks, we'll be joined by 13 different A to Z team members to make 16 of the 32. And then, Kyle, you'll have the two Dolphins pick. And then the other 14 will just be between the three of us. And I'll let you guys, the experts here on the panel, kind of do most of the driving of those picks. And I might be a tiebreaker if I have to be. So that's going to be a lot of fun for us here. And who knows how long it's going to take, but we're here for all 32 of these picks on our mega mock draft for A to Z Sports on the Monday of draft week. It's finally here. A few other things before we get started. Shout out to JT Runke, who's producing things behind the scenes and coordinating all of us, just kind of herding cats with the A to Z Discord here. Also, like the video. We're subscribing and subscribe to all these different channels. We've got a lot of channels going on here on this Mega Mock. A to Z Nashville, best pod available. We've also got the A to Z Film Room channel here, along with Dallas, Philly, and Detroit, and all of our other A to Z Sports network YouTube channels. Make sure you check those out and subscribe to the teams that you are fans of. And definitely check out what Kyle's got going on with the new content at A to Z Sports Film Room. And if you're a draft junkie, then Ryan and Joe, who we'll talk about later on, must add the best pod available to your routine. No trades in this mock because we're trying to keep JT's life as simple as possible. So, guys, how we doing? Ryan, I'll start with you. A crazy start to draft week with the Dexter Lawrence trade that we talked about on Sunday, and then all of the insider information that comes out Monday morning, and off we're running.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of stuff is very conflicting, obviously, of like what's being reported now in terms of like who's going to be in what slot, what team prefers. And it happens every year. But like, Kyle, I don't know if you feel similar to me this year. It feels like this year is kind of as unpredictable as I can remember, even at the top of the class to a degree. I mean, it feels like there's just a million scenarios that are being thrown out there, but I feel like I'm a little better usually of just kind of sorting through a lot of the minutia and all the deflections and all the posturing and everything. Like this year just feels a little bit different in that regard. So I'm excited for it to be Thursday night because we'll finally get some clarity and be able to talk about team fits and player, upside and all that type of stuff. But it has been it's been a really strange draft process so far, and I feel like Thursday night is going to be pretty wild, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ryan. This feels like a all-time chaos draft where, everybody kind of felt like stuff was chalk last year, and then the Jacksonville Cleveland trade happens. And we get like 3 of those in the top 10. Like we kind of already had one with Dexter Lawrence, but it didn't happen on draft night. But yeah, you're hearing teams tied to 3 players at the same position that they really like, and kudos to the teams for playing the game within the game. And I think you'll see a lot of jostling and positioning for some of these first guys off the board. We'll not have to tackle that part of it here, which I'm not mad about, because trying to recreate that magic ahead of time would probably be an impossible task.
For sure. So the good thing is that we know Mendoza is going 1. So I'm selecting all the teams on the A to Z Sports mock draft simulator. Are you guys light mode or dark mode? I know Ryan's a dark mode guy. Kyle, where do you? Light mode, dark mode?
I'm also a dark mode guy.
Okay, me too. I go back and forth, but I like both of them here. So
the blue just pops with the A to Z branding too for the selections. I'm in.
That's right. All right. So here we are, 1 round, all controlled by us, entering the draft room. And so we can go ahead and just do Fernando Mendoza right there. Number 1 to the Raiders. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I know they've been ignored the entire last few months, but anybody want to give some quick thoughts on where Mendoza is on their board compared to quarterbacks of the past, and kind of what the overall idea of what this Raiders team can be with Kirk Cousins in the fold as well?
Ryan, you go first.
Well, I was going to say, I always like to compare it to like past classes. And I think the easiest one for like people just, if you're just like a general fan that doesn't maybe pay attention year in and year out to the process. But when we talk about like that Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels class, like for me, he would have been quarterback 4 in that class and still above the Penix, Bo Nix tier of quarterbacks. JJ McCarthy, obviously, I did not like JJ as a prospect. So like he would be settling in there like at number 4, which I feel like has made some people kind of be very down on Fernando Mendoza, because I just think that he isn't as flashy maybe as a couple quarterbacks that we typically like to grapple towards, but he's also efficient as just about anybody that's come out in the last couple years, which I think we take for granted sometimes. We always fall in love with like the ceiling conversation for quarterbacks, but we also do need to understand that there needs to be a floor there. If there's not a floor, then you have an extremely high bust rate. And I just think that Fernando, for me, isn't obviously the elite caliber prospect at the quarterback position, but I think in a draft where the Raiders just need to substantially raise their floor as a franchise at the most important position, I'm more than okay with him being the number 1 draft pick in this specific class. So I like him. Honestly, Kyle, I don't know if you see it differently, but I don't necessarily love him. But I think that, again, I think he's a good quarterback prospect who is obviously the cream of the crop in the quarterback class this year.
Yeah, I think the quarterback class this year, I would covet slightly less than last year's, where I have Fernando in the same bucket as Cam Ward. It is funny, though. You think about, Ryan, you talked about kind of the boring element of Fernando. Like, I feel really good about saying this now on April 20th. This is going to be the first number 1 overall quarterback to not lead the league in yardage lost by sacks in the last 4 seasons. It was Bryce Young, and then it was Caleb Williams, and then it was Cam Ward. Like, they're running away with this their first year in the league because of the style of play. He's not that style of player. So I think that's kind of recalibrating what that top quarterback in a class looks like. It's been a lot about playmaking and outside of structure and the creativity and the ability to break a game open when things are wrong. And Mendoza is just very methodical and taking what's available. And I think he will do exactly what Ryan said, where he's going to raise the floor of that offense as a whole.
To the Jets. A week ago, it was easily, without a doubt, David Bailey. Now it's Arvell Reese. I'm thinking Arvell Reese is the slot here if it were up to me, but it's not up to me. So let's start with Kyle here. What are you thinking here for the New York Jets at 2 between those 2 players?
Yeah, I feel like Reese is a better fit for Aaron Glenn when you consider what Aaron did in Detroit, where they ran a lot of 3 linebacker stuff. So there's a pathway for him to be on the field as an off-ball linebacker. And then you get into your some package stuff, and you can let him rush off the edge as a pass rusher and have some ambiguity. But what is really interesting is the hot seat element of this pick, right? Where it seems like AG is very much in the crosshairs after one season, where Moogie is not. You don't get that sense at all. So does the GM exercise more of a big picture view to not lose out on the pick versus tailoring the pick to Aaron Glenn, who they got hired to get? It's just very messy. But if I'm looking at who they currently have in place to coach the team, I like Reese better to work with Aaron Glenn's defense. My concern is if this regime this franchise is going to show enough restraint if things get hard again in 2026 to not flush Aaron Glenn out with the rest of their reset.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting conversation in terms of the timelines. To your point, I would also agree with you 100%, Kyle. So I think we actually see this one pretty eye to eye. I just think that Arvell Reese is a better fit for what schematically this defense kind of wants to be moving forward. And I know that we're not going to hyper focus too much on the base defense element, because we know that we live in a world of sub now. But in a defense that does want to have some 3-4 element to it, I think that that's the perfect spot for Arvell Reese. Like, he's very LeVar Arrington-ish to me, where like he can play on the second level at times. He can rush off the edge. He can rush from the inside. He can do a little bit of everything, while David Bailey is going to do one thing at a very high level. But the interesting part is Will McDonald also does that one thing at a nice level as well. So like, is there too much redundancy there, right? Like, neither of them necessarily bring a great power profile. I mean, Bailey's more powerful than McDonald is, but like, I don't know, man. It just feels redundant to me. While I think that Reese is not a redundant fixture, I think that he actually potentially upgrades 2 different spots depending how you utilize him in year 1.
And
all right,
and McDonald can actually bend, where like Bailey, I think, is much more of a linear player. So I'm in on Reese being the pick here at number 2.
Boom. Reese is the pick. Okay. I guess it's going to get weird now. I don't really know because the Cardinals, there's according to Todd McShay, there's a voice in the building that wants Jeremiah Love at 3. We all know they want to trade back. That is not a surprise or a shock to anybody. Can't do it right here. So, Brian, I'll start with you this time. Knowing that we're not mocking trades, what do the Cardinals do? However you want to view this, if you view this as they can't back out of this spot and they're stuck here, what do they do? Or maybe they trade back and they land a player. Whichever direction you want to take this, I'm down with.
Man, I've heard so many different things about this pick conflicting. Like not too recently, I know I was mentioning to you guys that I was hearing that there was love for Maui Noah, even potentially as high as this spot. We're hearing a lot of Jeremiah Love stuff recently, you know, with your kind of excerpt there. I think that David Bailey makes sense for this team, right? Because if you're not going to be able to find a quarterback in this class, at least at this spot, I do think affecting the quarterback on the other side of the football is still a good recipe for building for the future. So I would probably go David Bailey if I had to stick at 3, but I am admittedly a little bit conflicted on this spot because I do think it is a great trade back option, obviously. But I would probably go Bailey if I had to stick.
I feel like the Love gas right now is all trying to coax somebody up in front of like Love's chalk at 4 right now is kind of the perception. So like, oh, maybe we'll just take him at 3 unless somebody wants to come up and take the pick off our hands. That's how I read the Love stuff because it doesn't. I get LaFleur's coming in and first year of a regime, but like you got needs on the offensive line. You got a lot of needs on the roster as a whole. Really? And you guys you brought back James Conner. There we were active with other running back contracts in free agency. Tip of the cap if they're really intending to do it, but I would probably lean offensive line personally.
Okay.
And I like Maui Noah a lot, but I do feel like the better scheme fit for LaFleur would be like a Spencer Fono, who's a natural right tackle to play with Paris Johnson as the left tackle there naturally long term. So that's where I think it makes a lot of sense for like if they're willing to trade back, they're probably comfortable with the fit of either guy. And I know we've heard some intel that they like Maui Noah, but if I'm just thinking about Mike LaFleur scheme, need at right tackle, we're hearing how the offensive line is going to fly off like hotcakes here throughout the course of this first round. I like it. Either Maui Noah or Fono would be like my preferred option. So,
Right.
Ryan, I don't know if you want to parse those out, if we want to kick it to Austin to nudge it somewhere, how you want to
Brian mentioned Maui Noah. So
I
I'm
did.
going to go with Maui Noah. You both brought up Maui Noah. So I'm going to use that as my tiebreaker. So
my last thing, also my last thing though, is Easton Freeze is coming up soon, and
I know who's on deck. So
I would like to see him. I would like to see him squirm a little bit. We take Bailey off the board, he's going to squirm a little bit more. You know, like that's
if you and I can make Easton continue to squirm and be in uncomfortable situations, I'm down with that too. So it's what do we want to do? We want to play our personal gain or for the mock overall.
I think, man, I think both ideologies make a lot of sense. I kind of, man.
All right, here's my tiebreaker.
Yeah.
I think David Bailey is the most likely player to be drafted in the 3 slot. How's that?
I would agree with that.
We agree with that? All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to do that, thinking that it could be somebody coming up to get him via trade. So, or Arizona could do it. So we're going to go David Bailey at 3, which now we have here David Bailey as look freak athlete, but Kyle, you mentioned it, not bendy whatsoever. Stiff as a board, speed rusher off the edge, right?
Conspicuously absent agility scores that I'm noticing there.
If you run that fast and then you don't do any of those other drills, there is a good reason for it.
He's like Luis Mendoza from the Mighty Ducks, man. Really good in a straight line, just can't stop. So
perfect. Now we let the first of 13 other A to Z members join the room here as Easton Freeze. It covers the Titans for A to Z Sports.com, and we bring him into the fold for the 4th pick. There, Easton. Welcome in, Easton. Here's the board. Bailey is gone at 3. Reese to the Jets. So now you have Jeremiah Love sitting at the top of the board for the Titans, which the floor is yours. What are you thinking here?
First of all, it's so pleasing to learn that the Arizona Cardinals NFL franchise is picking with screwing me over in mind. That is a fun thing to know. And you almost let me have David Bailey, who I believe to be the Titans' #1 option at 4, which would have pissed a lot of Titans fans off that I would have easily, without a second guess, passed on Jeremiah Love if you'd left me Bailey. But now that he is gone, and I agree with your ultimate decision to have Reese and Bailey and Mendoza be the 3 most likely to come off the board, this leaves Jeremiah Love as, I wouldn't say a sure thing at 4. There's still a part of me in the back of my mind that thinks that especially Robert Saleh in that building won't be able to help himself with loving Sonny Styles, but I really do think that Love is the pick that makes the most sense here and is a comfortable likelihood if this is the case. He's a guy that you're going to be instantly able to convince every fan to love and adore. It's never been an easier assignment for a team from a PR standpoint to get fans to buy in on a guy. He will be awesome at football. The value is questionable, and I have been healthily skeptical about that this entire draft season, as you all understand, but I do think that he's somebody that you compare with Cam Ward, who will be a force multiplier for Cam Ward, and that part of it is how I can convince myself to say, hey, he's the best offensive player in the class. He is going to directly impact and help Cam Ward take some things off of his plate, make defenses easier on him, and I can rock with that. So give me Jeremiah Love.
Jeremiah Love is the pick right there. Anybody want to disagree with Easton's pick here or agree with it, like it? I mean, with how the board fell, I think a trade back with Love on the board is probably less likely than if he were to go 3 to Arizona. But any thoughts, Ryan and Kyle?
I guess my only follow-up, Easton, would be if Love is at 4 and both those defensive players are off the board, if we were to maybe throw in an extra possibility of a team maybe wanting to trade up for, it could even be Sonny Styles, maybe not even Jeremiah Love, because we know that it's rare to trade up for a running back inside the top 10. If the options were a realistic trade back to get nice draft capital or stick at 4 and take Jeremiah Love, would that change your assessments at all in terms of what's best for this team?
If I'm in the GM chair, as long as it's
Yes.
a reasonable trade that the Titans are getting surplus value appropriate for a top 10, top 5 trade, yeah, I would make that trade without hesitation. Again, I don't dislike Jeremiah Love at all. I love him as a player, but I am not married to this team needing him. In fact, I'm skeptical that this team needs a running back, if I'm being just 100% honest. So I would do that. And if I had to put my predictive hat on and say, what would Mike Borgonzi do? I have maintained this entire draft season that I think deep down in that man's heart, on a fundamental level, it pains him just a little bit to take a running back at 4 on paper. So I'm not sure he would pass that up either, given its appropriate value.
All right, well, there it is. Jeremiah Love 4th to the Titans. Easton, we'll see you later. So I'm going to go ahead and remove Easton. And this is where things are going to get really fun because here we go. The Giants are on the clock, which means Joe DeLeon is in here on the stream to pick for the Giants. One of 2 picks here in the top 10. Joe is also a co-host with Ryan on Best Pod Available. So Joe, Jeremiah Love goes 4, David Bailey 3, Arvell Reese 2. So you're sitting here after the update over the weekend, the Dexter Lawrence trade, with your first of 2 top 10 picks. How are we thinking with this board?
Yeah, I think that this is somewhat of an expected scenario. You moved Dexter Lawrence, and I think that now the approach is going to be picking the best available defensive prospect of any iteration. Reese was expected to be pretty much gone, so they get to decide between Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs. I keep coming back to, and I'm going to keep bringing up here, I don't think that Sonny Styles really makes a lot of sense for them to go with. You could work out a world where you can have 2 gigantic middle linebackers with Tremaine Edmunds and Sonny Styles. I just think going and signing Tremaine Edmunds, it lowers the need to address linebacker, especially with that type of a body type specifically. I keep coming back to all the indications, all the signs, all of the comments by Harbaugh that Caleb Downs would be the selection here. Downs solves 2 problems for the Giants that right now are gigantic problems for New York. Their run defense was atrocious last year. And on top of this, their secondary, specifically their safety room, was terrible. It was just not good. Javon Holland was not worth the free agent deal. Tyler Nubin was not worth the 2nd round pick. You have the ability to add a new strong safety and have a guy that is going to be a really, really reliable dude that is going to end up becoming a big boost to that run defense as a tackler. So I like the thought of Downs, and I think that Downs has to be the direction.
All right, Caleb Downs goes 5th overall to the New York Football Giants there. The safety going of running back at 4 and a safety at 5. Man, what a weird draft. If this plays out like that, now Cleveland's on the clock. And but Joe, you have another pick coming up. Is there anything that you hope, any specific player that you hope falls to you at 10 with these next 4 slots?
Yeah, to me, I think that the mentality, if you're gonna now that I've had like enough time to like really digest the Dexter Lawrence trade, I think that you have to come away with these first 2 picks. One being a defensive player, being at pick 5 allows you to prioritize one of the blue chip defensive players as they've been categorized, and then look and see who the best available offensive player is. I'm really excited about the possibility of Francis Maui Noah still being on the board. I know that some Giants fans don't love the thought of it, and also University of Miami fans also don't like the idea of Maui Noah moving into guard, but I think it'd be great for his career. It'd be great for the Giants to have a guy that's that reliable, that he can play multiple positions, that he could bump into guard, and then Illuminor starts for the next couple of years. And then eventually Maui Noah, after he's got his feet wet and he is building towards a great career, could bump back out to right tackle, gets a big contract, gets paid the worth of being a tackle. Maui Noah is the guy that I would be hoping for is the Giants in this situation, that he would still be there.
Kyle, your thoughts on Downs at 5 and then the Maui Noah topic there too.
Yeah, I like the fit. You know, he's a little bit of a different player than Newbin, who's such a supersized player, and then Holland showed such great promise early in his career coming out and showcased kind of similar versatility with a little bit of a bigger body type than what Downs has at his disposal. But Holland there's just been a regression there that I think I know it's a different regime. Obviously, Joe Shane was part of signing the free agent contract. If you were hungry for that kind of versatility at safety, I think Downs can maybe breathe some life into that kind of vision for you. And obviously, there's going to be a period where with Harbaugh coming in and putting his thumbprints all over the team, that they'll start ejecting some of those bigger contracts that didn't work out once the guaranteed money runs out or they find a taker. So I like the fit for Downs, and I think Joe's kind of on the nose with the long-term outlook of the offensive line, and Illuminor was a big get for them back. He's been like a really sneaky good starting tackle for the last couple of years. So I think somebody that has that guard tackle flex makes a ton of sense if it's not wide receiver.
Well, and Austin, I think one cool thing too to mention with this fit and then Joe's ideology for hopefully a pick 10 if Maui Noah is still there is, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like you're looking for culture setters too early in the Harbaugh tenure. You know what I mean? Like Downs is a culture setter. Maui Noah, I mean, Mario Cristobal was not shy of kind of putting it on him and Bane as far as like what they meant for that program and that rebuild, right? So I feel like you're trying to find some culture setters in that room.
Right. They feel like Harbaugh guys. Downs especially, where I know that, Austin, you're making the comment of, man, it's crazy that we see a running back and a safety go this early. With a weak class, you can willingly take a safety that's maybe not a ridiculous athlete outlier because he's so smart, and he's a culture setter. He's a guy that's just going to bring that presence. And Maui Noah exactly would be that too, seeing the impact that we saw for the entire Miami offensive line being as good as it was because the tone was set every single play with Maui Noah at right tackle. I'm going to be praying. I'm going to be watching along slowly here and hoping that Maui Noah is still there. And I'm sure that someone will take him out from under me.
All right. Well, Ryan's got a couple swings to do that for you, just to spite you. He's already done that to Easton, so he's just making that his theme of the show. All right. Well, we'll see Joe here in a moment. Now the Browns on the clock, and we bring in our guy Brandon Little to pick for the Browns, his first of 2 picks here at 6. Brandon, what's up? Here's the board for the Browns. What's your thoughts on this? I know Cleveland's been interested in moving back from this 6th spot if possible, but with these first 5 picks, what are you thinking here?
Yeah, I mean, this sets up perfectly for the Browns. Their needs are offensive tackle and wide receiver, and neither of those positions have been picked yet. So, I mean, they're in a perfect spot here to either pick their player or more likely to trade back with everyone still on the board. So I think, I mean, they would take their player here. We're not doing trades, obviously.
Right.
So, I mean, Carnell Tate's the guy, I think.
Okay.
They need more playmakers. They got Harold Fannin, Quinshon Judkins. They need a wide receiver to kind of be on the outside and separate. And I think Tate can be that guy.
All right, Carnell Tate's gonna be the pick. I think tackle at 24 may be an option there. So, Kyle, you want to give your thoughts on Carnell Tate and his fit with Shador and the team up there in Cleveland?
Yeah, I think Tate makes a ton of sense for, Todd Monken coming in and what his pedigree's kind of been in the passing game, and that they totally revamped the offensive line. They hit last year on Fannin, or at least it looks like they did. So just kind of really filling out this group so they can assess Shadur Sanders. And if they don't like what they see, well, then they feel like they have a nucleus of talent to drop in another quarterback if they choose not to commit to Shadur long term. So I think Tate's got, obviously, I love those fits of players that have played relatively close proximity. So the Columbus to Cleveland fit, I really like players like that that are good for the brand and good for when they're good players, right? Like that's just an added bonus and cherry on top. And I think Tate has inside outside versatility. I think he'll continue to develop as a route runner, but I like what he does as the vertical playing guy down the field for a guy like Shadur that likes to take shots down the field. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Ryan, if the Browns decide to go O-line here,
Yep.
which one do you think they would prefer? And there's been a lot of talk about Freeling, Proctor, but 6 is very high for those guys. But what do you think the Browns would do here at 6 if they went O-line?
Yeah, I think as a collective, we might have gotten over our skis a little bit on Freeling after the combine. I feel like it's probably more likely he goes closer to pick 20 than obviously like pick 6 to Cleveland if that was a designation they want to try to make happen. I think that Spencer Fano would actually make the most sense of the offensive lineman on the board because the Browns invested in the interior offensive line and right tackle this offseason. I know we could argue like how long-term of a moves those are, specifically with Titus Howard at right tackle. But I do think that the spot that you need is left tackle. And while I like Francis Maui Noah a lot, he's not a left tackle on the NFL level. He's maybe a right tackle. So Fano, even though he started right tackle the last 2 years, he did start as a freshman at left tackle at Utah. And I think his athleticism kind of fits better in terms of potentially playing on the blind side. So I think it's probably Fano, but I also think that Brandon, if you want to comment on this, I think it's an interesting thing. I actually feel, and this is a weird thing to say, it's going to sound so silly saying out loud, but I think it's a better spot at 24 to find your left tackle than 6 in this class, which is just kind of really strange to say out loud, but I kind of believe it in this group.
Brandon, what do you think about
agree. I mean, there's no high end left. I mean, there's no premier left tackle that stands out on the left side early in this draft. I mean, most of the guys have played right tackle. So I think taking your wide receiver early makes sense, and then getting your offensive tackle later.
For sure. All right. Well, we will see Brandon later for the 24th pick for the Browns. And I think that's another weird thing about this draft is because it's the right tackle draft to go along with a running back at 4 and a safety at 5. So Carnell Tate 6, the Browns, the Commanders on the clock. This, to me, I have a pretty strong feel on where I think they go with this board. But Kyle, I'll let you start with what do you think the Commanders are going to do at 7 with this group available?
Yeah, I think when you look at what's on the board here, I like Mansour Delane.
Ooh.
I like Ruben Bane, but Sonny Styles being here at 7 is like, okay, we got a good break here. Let's not spit in the face of the football gods and turn this one down. This whole regime the last 2 years has kind of been built on some veteran 1-year stopgap players, and they have the breakout in 24. So then they double down on a lot of those contracts. And it was like, oh, well, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. I think Dan Quinn getting Sonny Styles to be the centerpiece of his front 7 makes all the sense in the world. I think it would be a massive upgrade for them. I think they sorely need some speed on the defensive side of the ball. Sonny gives them that.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think this is kind of a no-brainer at this spot because I think that if he gets past 5 to the Giants, I do think that that's where obviously the Dallas Cowboy calls come in to like hopefully move up to 6 to try to snipe Sonny Styles out from under Washington, because I just think it makes so much sense to Kyle's point because they signed Leo Chenal this offseason. It's funny, like the comparison between Arvell Reese and what Chenal can bring on the field are like kind of similar styles of players in terms of kind of being able to play some Sam and be able to play in the line of scrimmage at times, blitz from different spots. So now you have a pairing potentially of Styles and Chenal, which I think would be a really impactful second level for Washington.
Yeah, and I was thinking the same thing. When we talked to Mauricio, who's on the clock at 12 with the Cowboys, I wonder what he thinks the Cowboys would do to go up to 6. We talked with Brandon. The Browns would be interested in trading back to see if they can scoop Styles out from a division rival. So the Saints on the clock here. Is this where the Ruben Bane watch starts? You know, the whole thing the last couple of weeks about the car accidents coming out into the public and all of what goes around that. 8 to New Orleans. I know I'm sure Delane is an option here to stay. You know, we had Tate stay in local. Mansour Delane could stay fairly local too if you wanted it. But Ryan, I'll have you start with this one. 8 with the Saints. What are you thinking here with where they could go? Or it could be there's a lot of directions they could go.
I'm actually very conflicted on this spot because I do think that when you're talking about like Ruben Baines fit schematically into a defense, I do think that finding a team that was just see how they utilize Cam Jordan as kind of that bigger base power end is kind of an interesting fit overall. But then I do think there's a lot of credence to a Mansour Delane at cornerback because I think that they obviously need to upgrade that position. And then you can even throw Jordan Tyson into the conversation of like, hey, Tyler Shuck showed a lot of promise as a rookie. Let's put some more playmakers around him other than Chris Olave. So those are the 3 players I look at. I would actually probably steer towards Mansour Delane, but I just wanted to kind of set it up for Kyle because I'm going to give him the he can make the pick whatever he wants to make here because I think that there's a couple different options you could go with for the Saints here.
Yeah, and I'm gonna spike the ball you just handed me with Delane, with Brandon Staley as the defensive coordinator there. Feels like he's the cleanest one, right? Like Tyson with the durability stuff, Bane with the length projection and what that looks like. Oh, Staley, those DBs' ability to kind of be really ambiguous with what they're playing in coverage, whether it's man, whether it's zone, whether it's match. So I think Delane's got the football IQ to execute it at a high level. And I think the Saints have some nice pieces around him that can kind of amplify what he does and allow him to be a successful rookie. So all things equal with those other 3 players, I'll take the guy with the cleanest projection.
I'm down with that. Ryan, you good?
Yeah, man. No, I think it makes a lot of sense to defer to the floor when there's a close conversation. Agreed.
All right. Mansour Delane goes 8 to the Saints. Now we bring in another one of our A to Z members, Charles Goldman, to the show for the Chiefs on the clock at 9, picking super high because a lot of things went wrong. Charles, what's going on, man? Here's the board for you now. As you know, you and I have talked a couple different times recently about the Chiefs' potential interest in trading up. But we have Orville Reese going 2 to the Jets, David Bailey 3 to the Cardinals, Jeremiah Love for the Titans, Downs, Tate, Styles, Delane right there in front of the Chiefs at 9, who also have 29 in this first round with the McDuffie trade. So, Charles, what's going on? What's your first impressions here of the board for KC? I think you're muted. You're muted, buddy.
First impression.
There we go.
Apparently, I don't know how to turn on my microphone. Second impression. This board's probably not the best for the Chiefs, but also probably not the worst. Ruben Bane. Let's start there. I don't know. I don't know if he's on their board. Like, I legitimately do not know. They've done a ton of research, spent a ton of time with him. Obviously there's the stuff with the driving incidents, multiple incidents, right? So, those are things they're going to have to vet and understand. And, Brett has said that this is a draft class that they feel pretty comfortable with the depth at the edge rusher position. So I don't know that they feel that they need to go and get the guy right here at number 9 if it's not the guy that they want. And I just don't know that Bane's the guy that they want. Moving on to like Tyson, right? I could legitimately see a possibility where Tyson is the number 1 wide receiver on their board. I could absolutely see that happening. I mean, he's 21 years old. He's got a lot of, electric playmaking ability. There's some ties there from Colorado, where he kind of started out at, and Eric Bieniemy is a Colorado guy. Deion Sanders. I know that EB and Deion Sanders keep in touch a little bit. So I know Deion Sanders has been touting Jordan Tyson, even though he didn't really play for him there, right? So I think he's a strong possibility. The other one that I'm thinking about here, though, I know O-line has been a big topic among like national media, and Chiefs fans hate the idea of adding like an offensive lineman because you've already got your left tackle in Josh Simmons, and who you're going to take a right tackle at number 9 overall. I know it's an important position, right? But the way I see it is, right, you're basically taking the top offensive tackle prospect right now in this draft class. You have your opportunity to. How many times as the Kansas City Chiefs are you going to have in the future where you can take whoever's like your number 1 offensive tackle, whoever that may be? In my opinion, looking at this board, knowing what the Chiefs like at the offensive tackle position, I think that number got. I don't think it's my.
Oh, Charles getting sniped by the internet. I know if there's one battle that Charles cannot stand, it's the one with his internet provider there in Colorado, where it was snowing a couple days ago here in April. So, Charles, we got you back now.
Am I back?
It cut you off on a
So
cliffhanger.
anticlimactic.
I know, right?
Did it stop right before
Yes.
I said Monroe Freeling?
Oh,
there we go. There we go.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking Monroe Freeling. I haven't done many offensive tackle at pick number 9 drafts. So I'm sending it, guys. We're taking Monroe Freeling, pick number 9, offensive tackle out of Georgia. Here's what I have to say about it. This is a guy that, had he gone back to school, there's a lot of people who believe that he would have been in conversation for like the top prospect in this next draft class at the offensive tackle position had he gone back to school, right? Maybe he's not there yet in the eyes of like all evaluators, but like this profile, the Chiefs are never going to have a shot at getting an athlete like this at the offensive tackle position, picking at the end of round 1. Like you just don't get that. And I think the length, the feet, like it all just fits what they're probably looking for. And whether you decide, okay, hey, I'm going to throw him at left tackle and I'm going to shift Josh Simmons to the right side, or you're going to throw him in on the right side and keep Josh Simmons at the left side, I think this makes the team better. I mean, obviously fills that bucket of protecting Patrick Mahomes. You just got a brand new flashy running back in Kenneth Walker. So, shoring up the offensive line. And I keep thinking back to the fact that, Brett Veach is a big believer in, kind of that build through the trenches mentality. So
Wow.
if faced with that type of a decision where you can just go out and get your number 1 guy at offensive tackle, I think they do it.
Wow, our first big shock of the draft. 9, Monroe Freeling to Kansas City. Ryan?
I actually like that it left on a cliffhanger and then he had to come back, Charles. I think it made it more dramatic. It was nice, man. It was fun.
Spencer Fono. Like,
I was like, oh, Maui Noah or Fono's coming. And all of a sudden it's like, here's the bomb. I liked it, man. It was awesome. I think it's really interesting one because I think that we kind of use the boomer bust label like way too often in the draft space. But Freeling is a really interesting one because I do think that offensive line on top of quarterback is a spot that experience does matter going into the NFL, and Freeling's a guy that doesn't have a ton of it. Like he's a 1-year full-time starter. I think he started like 4 games in 2024. So he is still pretty new in terms of like development into what he can be on the next level. But if he hits, he is the most upside of any offensive tackle in this class. And I say that like with pretty, I mean, like a lot of vigor. Like there's not much debate in that conversation for me. There's some other talented dudes like Caden Proctor, but I think in terms of being able to play left tackle, play the blind side on the next level, I don't think there's anybody with higher upside than Freeling. It's just ultimately going to depend on just how much you trust your offensive line coach to get the most out of him long term.
Kyle?
Yeah, I dig the stylistic fit, and I appreciate a guy like Freeling and just how much room there is to grow, right? And was a right tackle sparingly, but the big breakout happened at left tackle and he barely played in 2024. So, or 2023. So he's on a very intense upward trajectory that putting him in this offense with Andy and Pat, where quarterbacks can help make life harder or easier for an offensive lineman, and a guy like Pat who makes the life so much easier for young offensive linemen as a whole. I dig the fit. I know it's not quite chalk, but if you're betting on the upside,
Yeah.
Freeling obviously has the proof of concept at left tackle and the very robust athletic profile.
Charles,
All
one
right.
quick follow-up if I can. If there was a second option on the board for you, because I know you mentioned Tyson and offensive line, would the number 2 offensive lineman on your board be it over Tyson because of the injury stuff, or would you have deferred to Tyson if it wasn't going to be Freeling?
I probably would have deferred to Tyson if it wasn't
Okay.
Freeling. I think, there's so much appeal to like going out and finding who's going to be that next like superstar playmaker that the Chiefs have after Travis Kelce hangs it up. I think that's a question that they still have to answer. I think there's maybe some hope that, a guy like Xavier Worthy can emerge in year 3. He didn't really have the year 2 they were hoping for, but besides that, it's kind of slim pickings with the the pass catchers and guys who are there for maybe the long haul, right? So I think that Tyson is one of those guys with, he's 21 years old. I know he's got some questions with the injury history, and he's not like the perfect fit for what I think the Chiefs like to do and like in their receivers, but he definitely has that superstar potential. And I can see their new wide receiver coach like really falling in love with a player like that.
All right. Well, we will see Charles at 29. Right there. All right. Big shock on the board. Now, we had this plan for the A to Z Sports Mega Mock. By the way, like the video if you haven't yet. Subscribe to all the channels that are attached to this thing because I think there's 6 of them right now across the A to Z network, including Kyle's new A to Z Sports Film Room content that's just relaunched out here, and Ryan and Joe's best pod available. But we made these plans with having the Bengals in mind at 10, and we didn't want to just like leave John Sheeran out of the party. So we're going to bring John in here. So your level of shock when Dexter Lawrence, in fact, did get traded to Cincinnati, something that I've seen some of your other content. The Bengals don't do this. And how are the vibes there in Cincy?
I would say the Bengals don't do this is like the understatement of the year. This is like a politician saying like, I'm not going to do this. And then he does the exact opposite thing. And it's just like, it's whatever the case may be about something that's completely unprecedented. This is that times 10. Like the Bengals, the last time that they traded more than like a 7th round pick for a player was in 1998. It was Paul Justin for a 5th round pick. The concept of trading a 1st round pick for a player for the Bengals is just it's otherworldly. It does feel like we are entering in like a threshold about like anything is possible now for the Bengals in trades. But the one thing that has remained consistent is the Bengals always love to prioritize height, weight, speed, movement, ability freaks. And excuse me, as soon as the idea of them getting Dexter Lawrence on this team at that cost, I think that intrigued them. And I guess like the overall fact that, they look at the board and how it could end up playing out and how they couldn't get potentially a defensive player that they won, that is what spurred them over the top. But still, for them to actually do this instead of like seeing how the board goes and maybe trading down to get into that next bucket, it completely blew my expectations, and I was not expecting it at all.
Well, and Bane's the only guy left here from how we did it. So from a Bengals perspective, if Thursday night comes around and Ruben Bane's the only top tier defensive guy left, is this a win for the Bengals?
This is tough because I have seen a lot of the discourse about Ruben Bane, and I've seen him like fall into the teens. I don't think that he would have gone past the Bengals. I really don't.
Yeah.
I think that the Bengals were looking at about 7 players that they were targeting with that pick, and they were going through all the scenarios. And this has been reported by some insiders as well, like how they were very worried about the fact that the first 9 picks could go in a way in which maybe there's not an offensive lineman picked off the board. Maybe only Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Love are the offensive players that go after Fernando Mendoza, and they were left without one of their defensive players. And I think they were very interested in Jermon McCoy, but then as soon as his medical rechecks came back on the negative side, it really just clouded things. So I think that Bane was one of the guys that I would have definitely considered over Dexter Lawrence. But again, like it's very much a risk and up in the air if he's actually going to be there. I think if this draft played out like this and the Chiefs take Monroe Freeling out of nowhere, I think the Bengals may be like, man, like maybe we could have actually gotten one of our guys. But I think still like the risk over reward was still worth it for the Bengals because Bane is really the only guy I would have actually considered at the spot. And I think the Bengals would have taken him if he was there.
Ryan, what do you think? Did the
it's
Bengals win this
interesting.
situation?
Well, I think, and John, I would love to hear your perspective on it because I did say on a show recently that I think that early on, at least, and we won't know the exact winner loser, quote unquote, of the trade. Maybe both people are winners in the end, but like on the surface, I'm like, that feels like a 10th overall pick felt like a lot for me for what Dexter Lawrence was this past year. Now, maybe he returns to form and like it ends up being a little bit of a bargain. I don't know. You mentioned though that this is a move that the Bengals just don't make historically. Like it just isn't a thing. Does this feel like a new age thinking, or does this feel like desperation? Like I'm just interested on like that vibe from a Bengals perspective.
It's very hard to look at this and not think it's an all-in move because again, it's just so uncharacteristic for the Bengals. And Zach Taylor is entering the second to last year of his contract. They've gone 3 years without going to the playoffs. There's so much pressure on Al Golden, specifically at defensive coordinator, just to give him talent to make sure that his scheme works. I think everyone in that building is feeling more pressure now in this part of the Joe Burrow era, with Jamar Chase, D. Higgins, and all the offensive side of the ball taken care of. So I definitely do think that there is a level of pressure and desperation that they haven't necessarily felt before with this face of the franchise leading them. Again, like to the point of them being pushed to make this type of move is still unexpected. But I also think that in terms of the price and who Dexter Lawrence is now, what he has been, and what the 10th overall pick brings in terms of value, I think in this draft specifically, they were very much eyeing a 1A defensive player, and the idea that, first of all, that overall bucket is rather limited in this year's draft, and like there are questions with a lot of the players that are going to end up going in the top 10, and the Bengals just felt like we weren't going to get that anyways. So even if Dexter Lawrence does come with questions with the elbow injury and the fact that statistically he wasn't as dominant as he was in years past, there's still the feeling that yes, like he as a player for the next 3 to 4 years, if he ends up signing like another extension, is going to be a better investment compared to another defensive prospect like a Mansour Delane, like a Ruben Bane, who has some deficiencies and limitations rather. And it's just the fact that there wasn't that true talent that they felt like was going to be there, or they felt like had a good chance of being there. I think that came into the calculus of giving up the 10th pick.
All right, John, the Bengals are going to be picking at like back in the 40s. So I think the next dynamic is going to be fun because we're going to bring Joe DeLeon back to the stage as he's picking his second pick for the Giants. And then Kyle has the Dolphins right after. And the Dolphins need everything. But Joe, you've been sitting in the background watching the last 5 picks. Monroe Freeling goes 9. The Giants went Caleb Downs at 5. You like where you're at?
Well, I mentioned earlier that if Francis Maui Noah is still on the board and I'm the Giants, I'm incredibly ecstatic. I'm juiced up. I would have considered, if he wasn't here, maybe going Vega Ione. Carnell Tate being gone makes this an even simpler decision because that would have been the other guy that I would have considered. I'm still not totally buying the whole Jordan Tyson thing, but Kai Lemon would probably be a better fit in the slot because they need a replacement for Wando Robinson. But we've got Maui Noah on the board. I already outlined why I think this makes perfect sense. He is the highest floor offensive lineman. He is super reliable. He's got a big build. He's got exactly the type of build for a player that can bump inside the guard and then eventually move back out to tackle. So I see Maui Noah being that tone setter, being another one of these reliable players that the Giants need to get their offensive line right. And I think a big bit with this, it's been talked about a lot, numerous times by Harbaugh and by Shane, that the offensive line, the interior of the offensive line has to be addressed. It has to be fixed. It's one of their biggest priorities in the NFL draft. While receiver is recognized as something that they might dip into, it has not been brought up as much as them going after a key, impactful interior offensive lineman. I think that Maui Noah has got to be the pick here.
All right. Maui Noah is the pick there at 10 for the Giants' second pick. So Downs, Maui Noah. Kyle, your thoughts of watching as the Dolphins at 11, seeing Maui Noah go, the Miami guy right in front of Miami. What are your thoughts at the last couple of O linemen off the board there?
Yeah, I like Francis as a fit there. And, I think there is a bit of a fail safe where if you want to start him at guard and he ends up being phenomenal at guard, then go find another tackle down the stretch. But, you get some Andrew Thomas insurance as a guy who's had some injuries throughout the course of his career to go with Aluinor, who you brought back. So I think it gives you a lot of flexibility to have a guy that could start and project to start at guard or tackle. And it feels very Harbaugh to me. I kind of agree with Joe. Like the Tyson gas right now feels convenient. Especially knowing that Harbaugh gets to rubber stamp all the decisions. So even if Joe Shane's super high on Jordan Tyson, it's John Harbaugh's call. And this feels like a John Harbaugh pick to me. So I think we're doing 1 + 1 = 2 with the logic here. I think it makes a lot of sense.
All right, Joe. Thanks a bunch. Giants 2 picks, get Downs and Maui Noah at 5 and 10. All right, Kyle. Now the Dolphins at 11, the first of 2 picks. You could go a million different directions.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I've got a list of 12 names that I feel comfortable with.
12
Just conveniently. Yeah. Well, you're not realistically going to get all of them,
Okay.
and the vast majority of them are off the board now. But I've
Okay.
got a few left that were on the
No,
list.
I want to hear the full Scotty.
Yeah, I want to hear the full
12
12
right
of it.
Give me the full 12. It was Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, and Ruben Bane were the tier 1 names that I had.
Ah.
So that's your spoiler for where we're going to go here with Ruben Bane.
Ah.
And then it was Maui Noah, Ioane, Spencer Fono, Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Love, Fernando Mendoza, Arvell Reese, Mansour Delane, and then Dylan Thieneman would have been
Ooh, yes.
like, that's my sneaky one.
So,
Oh.
okay, Kyle, before you go in on Ruben Bane, could I just say in the back end of our studio, I see Mauricio I think he just said the F word several times. Announcing your Bane picks. That's what it looked like in the background to me.
Sorry, Mauricio. But we are going to lock in the card with Ruben Bane on it. I think the length questions are legitimate, but at the same time, I do feel like this is somebody who has a player profile that can survive without having the longest arms. It's more of a wingspan conversation, and I think he's got enough there as compared to just the pure arm length. I think the way that he plays with the power in his hands to reset the line of scrimmage gives him a higher floor as a run defender. And the Dolphins desperately need an edge rusher that's not the Chop Robinson, Josh Uche mold of player, because that's pretty much everybody that they've got right now. So if it wasn't going to be Bane, it was going to be Spencer Fono, but Bane being here on the board is a guy that I had in my tier 1 list of guys. I'm making him the pick.
All right. And then you did have a prediction, right? At A2Zsports.com that no Miami players in the top 10.
I did do that.
You almost got there.
Well, yeah. Maybe the Giants go Spencer Fono.
Yeah, maybe, right?
Maybe they go Jordan.
Joe messed up everything as usual.
He did.
All right, let's bring Mauricio Rodriguez in the stage, who is going to be FCC safe here now that he's on camera. But Mauricio, this is exactly what you feared, right? This is why the Cowboys probably want to move up, is because you're sitting here looking at this board and you're like, what do you do?
Yeah, because I just think at this point it's anyone's guess. Who would the Cowboys pick in this situation? Who do they like the most? I think we would hear a shocker on draft night, honestly, at number 12, because the best guys are mostly offensive guys. I don't think the Cowboys want to go there. I know BPA is a thing, but there isn't even a guy that you feel great about picking on offense, right? You could go maybe one of the wide receivers. There's a George Pickens angle. Does that mean they could maybe trade him now that he's under the franchise tag? I don't think the Cowboys want to play that game, though. I think at this point, they're looking for trade back options. Maybe they can get the Ravens or the Bucks, maybe to try to jump the Rams, something like that. But since we're not doing trades, I'm going to stick to defense. And I think the Cowboys could just call a name that might be a shock to a lot of people. And that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go with a cornerback. I'm going to go with a Tennessee Bowl, but it's not going to be Jermont McCoy. It's not going to be Jermont McCoy. It's going to be Colton Hood at number 12 overall. There's been some whispers that maybe that's somebody that the Cowboys are higher on going into the NFL draft. I'm going to go with Colton Hood here at number 12.
Look, Colton Hood.
Look at Ryan sitting up in his chair.
Yeah, Ryan.
That's the first.
Ryan got an electrocution shock on that one.
Kyle, I don't know how many mock drafts you've looked at this draft season so far. I've looked at a lot, obviously, and made a lot. And this is the first one, Mauricio, and it's not a negative. It's just an observation. The first mock I've seen that has Hood going before McCoy that I can remember. I don't think I've seen one yet. So
there was a time after the combine. After the combine, when McCoy didn't work out before his pro day, where he ran the sub 4.4 of like could that happen? But like a dozen picks later, you know?
Here's the thing about the Cowboys. I feel like they feel that they're in a win now window. And I think they like the fact that they have a top 7 scoring offense that might get even better in 2026 because it's going to be the second year with Brian Schottenheimer leading the charge. It's going to be the second year of George Pickens playing alongside Dak Prescott. And I think they want players that are absolutely 100% playing well in week 1. And I think that's the biggest thing with Hood. He's a high floor guy. He's somebody that might be able to start day 1 and you may be comfortable with it. The Cowboys want to keep Deron Bland outside, sorry. In this case, I don't know if that would be the scenario because you maybe want Colton Hood playing on the outside, right? But they would get some more guys at cornerback, and I like the value at edge rusher maybe better at number 20. Maybe I'm jinxing myself right here, but I think the Cowboys feel like they can get their guy at 20 in the edge rusher position, whereas here they get their guy at a cornerback. I don't think the Cowboys make this pick, though. I don't think the Cowboys are going to be picking at 12. However, you never know with the NFL draft. This is exactly why you don't want them picking at 12 if you're a Cowboy fan.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Colton Hood, good football player, though. He just around the football, aggressive, has the right type of short-term memory. So, all right, Mauricio, we will see you here in a few picks when the Cowboys back on the clock at 20. That was a shocker. We've had a couple shockers here recently as the A to Z mega draft goes on. So, Ryan, I'll let you go with the Rams. You're a Rams fan in the New Jersey area, one of the few, I'm sure. So, what are you looking at with the LA Rams, knowing they're probably going all in on some of the last years, or maybe the last year of Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay? Who knows what that looks like? But with the board playing out, what the Rams doing?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think that there's an interesting comparison between short-term and long-term feedback or capital off of this pick here, because I think that the two guys that people will look at, and actually I'll lump two guys in together, but I think that the Rams would either look at wide receiver to continue to strengthen that room, especially with the Puka Nacua stuff that's happening this offseason. So you can go either direction of a Jordan Tyson or a Mekhi Lemon, whatever flavor you want. Mekhi feels like more their type, is kind of like more that like power slot type of dude, but I think Tyson could obviously fit into that offense as well. The other one is Spencer Fano, because although McClendon played pretty well at right tackle last year, I still think that it's interesting for a long-term outlook of adding a guy like a Fano that can play so many different spots. I mean, he could be your right tackle of the future. He could be an interior offensive lineman. He could even be your center of the future if that's what you deem him to be. So it really depends on like the short term versus long term. Everything though, and the reason that I'm going to go with Jordan Tyson here is because everything this offseason that the Rams have done has been very short term oriented. They are going for a Super Bowl in 2026. The Trent McDuffie deal, Jalen Watson signing, aggressive in free agency, even though it wasn't huge volume. They ponied up some dough. I think that they would go with a guy like a Tyson, even if there are some question marks about the long term in terms of durability. I think they want more about like 2026 first. So I would go with Jordan Tyson, wide receiver at Arizona State here if I made the pick.
Kyle, thoughts?
Yeah, I like the splash, right? You guys are close. You're playing with house money, picking 13 after an NFC Championship game appearance. Yeah. Swing the bat, right? Just go down swinging. I like the psychology here with this pick.
All right, moving on to the Baltimore Ravens. Kyle, I'll let you start with this one. This one feels like, offensive line. There's a couple pretty good options here to pick from. Maybe Kenyon Sadiq. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I was mentally prepared for this to be Vega Ioane from Penn State until I see Spencer Fano sitting on the board here at 14, where I know they've got Ronnie Stanley. I know they've got Roger Rosengarten, but they lost Tyler Linderbaum. Their center situation, they could play Fano there. I actually think Fano's ceiling might be highest at center as an NFL player. I think he's got electric athleticism and what he can do to work to the second level. So I'm going to pick Fano, thinking that he can be a long-term left tackle after Ronnie Stanley hangs it up. But I know I can play him at center, and that Linderbaum loss, like, I get we signed John Simpson in free agency to kind of help the guard situation, and a lot of Ravens fans will tell you they're better by subtraction with moving on from Daniel Faalele, but that center spot took a big hit, and that's a pretty unique skill set you're trying to replace. I think Fano can do it.
All right, Spencer Fano is going to go 14 to the Baltimore Ravens, and now we bring in Evan Winter, $15 on the clock. Evan, what's going on? Here's the board. I know the fun thing about this is it's not live, so you guys are coming in here kind of blind, which I think is a fun exercise aspect of it. So we had the first big shock when Monroe Freeling 9 to the Chiefs, Ruben Bane 11 to the Dolphins. Mauricio went Colton Hood, the other Tennessee corner, with the Cowboys, and a board that he absolutely despised at 12. Tyson to the Rams, Fono to the Ravens, and now the Bucks on the clock at 15. If you're watching, make sure you hit that like button as well. Evan, what are you seeing from Tampa's perspective here?
Yeah, I kind of feel like Mauricio right now, but no, in all
Trade
seriousness,
back, trade back, trade
yeah,
back.
yeah. Just let me start with this. Ideally, in a perfect world, Tampa Bay would be able to trade back in this
Yeah.
situation. Steelers at 21, Browns at 24, maybe Bills at 26. But yeah, so with this, I mean, you got to go with the best pass rusher on the board, and that would easily be Akeem Mesidor. He's going to be a few scrolls down though.
He is a few scrolls down there. So why Mesidor, in your opinion, over a Keldrick Falk, over somebody else that maybe, it's really just those two guys. If you just want to sort to like edge, Keldrick Falk, Mesidor, we're kind of in that no man's land, which is, I think, is why you're kind of worried about, or you're wanting to trade back. But why Mesidor over Falk for the Bucks at 15?
Yeah, he's just an overall better pass rusher. Falk, that's just not the name of his game right now. He's a big, strong run defender primarily. Now he has pass rush potential, but the Bucks need an instant boost right off the edge, and Mesidor can provide that. He's got a deep bag of pass rush moves. He's not explosive, but he plays with just his hair on fire, and he's like a really high sense of urgency. People talk about Ruben Bane's relentlessness. Akeem Mesidor is right there next to him, in my opinion. So really strong character as well. He's got leadership ability. Obviously the injury history and the age, aren't ideal whatsoever. But he's just a refined product at this point, and that's what the Bucks need. They don't need another experiment. They need a guy who can come in, step right away, and boost that pass rush.
I know with the COVID situation and a lot of older guys entering the draft, sometimes I think an older player is a positive, and I think it depends on the team, the spot, the position, all of that. And I think the maturity of Mesidor, I forget who I heard this from, so I'm stealing it from somebody, but Mesidor's used his NIL earnings to go out there and invest back in himself with finding a pass rush coach, going through and taking care of his body, all this kind of stuff. So I think that makes a lot of sense. When you guys that old has an experience, you get stuff like that more than you would of a 20-year-old, 21-year-old who's just trying to figure out life. 25-year-olds don't have life figured out either, but you guys get what I'm saying. But so Kyle, I'll let you start first with thoughts on Mesidor 15 to Tampa.
Yeah, if you're looking to upgrade your pass rush, this is the kind of guy I think you can bet on. Where some of the other edges, Falk is very rough around the edges in that regard. Not Peter Woods. TJ Parker is a little bit more of a power style player that they've kind of gone for that type, where I think Mesidor has a little bit more twitch and burst. So they also they lost which defensive lineman left in free agency this year that I'm blanking on for Tampa.
They lost Greg Gaines. They lost in terms of the edge. They didn't lose anybody in the edge room.
No, the pass rush.
Hassan Reddick. Yeah, they technically lost him.
So, and Mesidor has the ability to kind of reduce down inside where they have some.
You're thinking of Logan Hall. My bad. Man.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of Logan Hall. Yeah, so they lose Logan Hall, who's a guy who has the ability to kind of play over top of tackles and kick down inside. And Mesidor in his past has played at some heavier weights to be able to kind of move around the front. So if they want to play him at 260, play him at 260. If they want to put him at 270, 275, I think he has that kind of ambiguity to his game where he can give you some value in some different alignments.
I'm also interested to see, and Evan, maybe you want to comment on this, but I'm interested to see how Tampa operates in this draft in terms of the short-term outlook, because obviously it hasn't been a bad team the last couple years, but there is a lot of, I feel like the air came out of the balloon a little bit this past season in terms of there being a lot of higher expectations. And I'm interested to see just kind of with Todd Bowles coming into a very important season, just kind of what the nuance or what the initiative is to really win now, to not necessarily preserve your job, but to make sure that you are an ascending team and you don't kind of stagnate, and hopefully your job security is at a full capacity moving forward.
Yeah, so I absolutely hate this. I'm calling it an excuse. They're calling it a reason, but they're really leaning into the injury stuff from last year. They believe they still have a very competitive team as long as they stay healthy. We all know the irony in that statement. So they just really they've got to get an impact player in the pass rush. They really need to get another impact player at linebacker and even at corner. So the defense has a lot to, has a lot it needs to improve upon in terms of just personnel. So yeah, they're just banking on really the roster on the offensive side of the ball. And then on defense, yeah, they're plugging holes and whatnot. But they're essentially, just from what, Jason Light, especially what he said last week during his pre-draft presser, they feel really good about the roster, and they feel like, they're just a few players away from getting back up to that contender status, which I think a lot of people who cover the team closely would disagree with.
Mesidor 15 of the Bucks. Thanks, Evan. As we keep rolling on in the A to Z mega mock draft here, the Jets on the clock. I think Ryan, did you start with the Jets too, Arvell Reese? I'll give Kyle the first shot at what the Jets want to do with their second pick at 16 here. Kyle, with the board, I think there's some pretty solid options here.
Yeah, I'd like to see them go wide receiver here and kind of do the thing that we talked about with the Browns when the Browns went wide receiver a little earlier in this mock and say, hey, we know Geno Smith's not the long-term answer, but you want to have a good cast in place, and they've made a lot of investments in the offensive line the last couple years. Mekhi Lemon here to go opposite what they have with Garrett Wilson, I think is really a compelling name to invoke. You could talk me into considering Casey Concepcion as compared to Mekhi Lemon, but I'd put Lemon on the floor as kind of the expected kind of third in line for this year's class and say I'd propose Lemon to be the pick for the Jets.
Ryan?
Yeah, my initial thoughts was I wanted to make Mike Payton squirm next, as I've been doing to people here, and pick somebody that I know he's going to take. I know exactly who he's going to take next pick. But yeah, I will agree with Mekhi Lemon, because I think that while Geno Smith is not the long-term in the quarterback room, you're going to figure out the quarterback spot over the next, 16 months or so, right? Like, you're going to figure it out in 2027. I think that building around, because the offensive line is actually in a pretty good spot. Like, you feel good about the Jets' offensive line, adding playmakers, and I think the inside-outside versatility that a Mekhi could bring in comparison to Garrett, who can also do a lot of those same things, but in a much different package. I think that brings a lot of upside to whoever that quarterback is after Geno Smith. So I'm in agreement on Mekhi Lemon.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw Arch Manning threw like 3 or 4 interceptions in the spring game. So he's just trying to stay away from the Jets again next year too. So we'll see what yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. So now we bring on with the Lions on the clock, the aforementioned Mike Payton. Mike, Lions here. Ryan thinks he knows what you're going to do. So I don't know if you're just that telegraphable or what, but what are you seeing here for Detroit here at 17 after Mekhi Lemon goes 16 to the Jets?
Yeah, Ryan's been reading my articles. It's very clear. I'm taking Vega Ioane here with the 17th pick. I know the Lions need a tackle and they need an edge rusher, but the Detroit Lions do not draft for need. It's never been the thing they do. They're best player available all day, and the best player left on this board is Ioane, without a doubt. I think this guy's one of the more NFL-ready guards we've seen in quite some time. Hasn't allowed a sack in 2 years, is really good in the run game, which is what the Lions need. It does cause some questions because they picked up Juice Scruggs in the David Montgomery trade, and they have Christian Mahogany, who started last year. And, I don't know what the Lions are going to do. Plus, they drafted Miles Frazier. So somebody might have to maybe move to tackle or something, or get ready to be a backup for a while, because this guy, once he gets in at left guard, he's not leaving it for probably the next decade. I think this is an unbelievable pick for the Lions.
Yeah, one of those things is like, just draft him, we'll figure it out, and it's going to be better than it was without him, right? Ryan, is this what you thought Mike was going to do?
Yes. Yeah. Me and Mike have talked a little bit about what he thinks the Lions would do at 17, and I knew as soon as Ioane, I can't say his name, sorry, Vega was on the board, my apologies. I knew that was going to be the pick that they're going for. I know that it's very strange in terms of, as Mike mentioned, the fits, but I just also don't necessarily think that either of Juice Scruggs or Christian Mahogany are good enough players to say no to Vega, right? Like, I think that kind of comes into the conversation. Maybe you just throw 5 guards across the board and just run the ball all day. I don't know. Maybe that's what you want to do. But I think Vega is a very sound fit for Detroit in terms of the value at 17. He is better than the 17th best player in the draft. So I definitely understand the appeal there.
If Vega's not there, Mike, the next offensive lineman / BPA, what would you be thinking there?
Yeah, it's really tough because you think about Kenyon Sadiq because of Sam Laporta's back injury, and you think about Jamad McCoy because of who knows what's going on with Terry and Arnold and the potential legal situation there. But I think the Lions really, from what I've been told, the Lions really like Keldrick Fall, and I think that he would probably be the pick if Ioane was not here. Really good against the run. Needs some help in the pass rush a little bit, but he really fits what the Lions want to do on the defensive line.
All right, Mike, thanks a bunch. And from one NFC North guy to the next, we go Minnesota Vikings, Tyler Forness. Vikings on the clock at 18. Tyler, what's going on? As you get to scan the board here, let me know if you want me to poke around a little bit. Now we're getting deeper. I get to use the different functionalities of the simulator. But what's your first impressions of this board, the first 17 picks here with the Lions going Vega at 17?
I wouldn't be that surprised. Look, the Lions really want to make a focus, as Mike talked about, on running the football and having maulers in the middle. That was why they were so successful at the beginning of the Dan Campbell era when they made that NFC Championship game. They had dudes who could move people. And when you're going to put that much of a focus on Jahmyr Gibbs in that run game, it makes a ton of sense to add to that offensive line. And he just feels like a Dan Campbell kind of guy. So it makes complete sense. Looking at the board, I guess I'm a little surprised Fono to the Ravens, but
yeah,
with
Freeling went 9 to Kansas City. So Charles came in here and gave us our first big curveball.
You know what? I like Freeling in the top 10. I think he's the kind of guy that you would want to really bet on some of that upside. I think it sets up really well for the Vikings. The consensus is going to say Dylan Thieneman. I think that's a psyop. I don't see him as a first-round player. I have a very high third-round grade on him. Some of the stuff I've been hearing from a Vikings-specific standpoint is I don't think that they were going to want to target a safety. If they do, I think it'll be trading Stokes of Arizona, not Thieneman, not Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. I think it's a little too high for Stokes here.
Yeah.
Now, if they were to trade back, I think it could be a really interesting option at the end of round 1, probably top of round 2. But the way I see the board right now, I think it would be Kenyon Sadiq. And it solves a couple of different issues for the Vikings. One, it gives you a wide receiver 3 where they really don't have somebody they're comfortable with Ty Felton having been the Hunter's second overall pick last year, and he was just a special teams gunner. 2, TJ Hawkinson had that final year of his contract voided, so he's a free agent after the year. Kyler Murray's most success throwing the football in his last full year in 24 was in 13 personnel with an EPA per pass of 0.56. You get Sadiq, you can work him in as a third tight end, get him a little more acclimated with strength and technicality on the blocking standpoint. You can flex him out as a wide receiver 3, run a lot more 12 personnel. And all of a sudden, now you're planning for 2026 and in the future 2027. I think that would probably be the route they go based on how the board lands here. One wild card for a trade down, I think they'll be very interested in CJ Allen, the linebacker out of Georgia. Okay. Not a lot of 20-year-olds would be able to run Glenn Schumann's defense basically by himself on the field. And Brian Flores really prioritizes that football IQ, along with the Vikings only having one linebacker on the roster in 2027 right now.
All right, so Sadiq's the pick at 18. Kyle, what are your thoughts there? I think Sadiq to the Panthers usually is a pretty good fit, but one pick earlier, what do you think about the Oregon tight end? I noticed Tyler said wide receiver 3, too. That stood out to me.
Yeah, I think Sadiq's one of those guys, passing game weapon, right? And I know Dan Morgan is pounding a pillow right now, just ticked off that they got sniped here with Sadiq on one pick before, because I think it to Carolina would make a ton of sense. But I like the addition and Kevin O'Connell getting another piece, and you're seeing just how meta the multi-tight end stuff is across the league. And Tyler mentioned the expiring contract for Hawkinson. So I think there's a lot of stars that line up here with a board that didn't fall super great for Minnesota. I think this is a great pick amidst what was maybe not like your ideal board draw for the Vikings.
Ryan, any thoughts?
I think Kenyon Sadiq in a vacuum without positional value kind of injected, I think, is a top 10 player in this draft. So I think that you got value just in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
I also think that, as Tyler said, Kyler Murray does function a lot better with multiple tight ends on the field. So in that ideology, I think adding that type of player who has the upside to not only play as kind of that detached player, as a de facto wide receiver 3, but he also is a guy that is a good blocker who can play in line, can play H, can be an F. Like, he can do a little bit of everything. So I think that the fit makes a lot of sense, especially for I would say a coaching staff right now and Kevin O'Connell that's going into a very important year. And I know he's had some good success with kind of those mercenary quarterbacks in the past. So you're hoping that you get the most out of Kyler Murray. And I think that Kenyon Sadiq was a big help to that.
All right, Tyler, thanks a bunch. As Sadiq, 18 to the Vikings. Now the Panthers, Dan Morgan just probably finished punching whatever pillow or empty chair. I had a basketball coach. Side note, this is like, I won't name his name because this is probably not okay for an 8th grade AAU basketball team. But the chair next to him on the bench was off limits because that was his slam the chair seat. And so we were like 13. And anyway, so that's maybe what Dan Morgan was doing there with Sadiq going 1 pick ahead of him and the Carolina Panthers. So, Kyle, I'll toss it to you. What do the Panthers do here with this board?
This
Any
is
lean?
It's a tough draw, man.
Yeah.
This is I don't love the options if we're being honest. I think you could probably look at and consider some corner where Mike Jackson was good last year, but he's not an older player going into a contract year, right? So I think that's a little unsettling. I think you can look at what they have on the edge, and they lost DJ Wanham in free agency. That was like a 600 snap guy for them. And I know they doubled up with Princely Umanmielen and Nick Scorton last year, but I think there's another seat in the table there for a rotation on the edge. Potentially offensive tackle with Ike Mekwanu with a knee injury, and then they signed Rasheed Walker on a 1-year, $5 million contract that was relatively cheap. So I'll kick it to Ryan as like a launch point, and I want to work through this one together just because like this is the first draw of a board for a team that like, wow, this sucks. Like this it's a pretty brutal break for what happened in front of them.
Yeah, I think offensive tackle is a good shout out just with the Iquanu situation. And like you mentioned, you signed Walker to just a 1-year deal to see if there's something there. Even he thought his market was going to be a lot higher in free agency. He had to settle for the Carolina opportunity. I do think that secondary is interesting. I would also throw out Dylan Thieneman as a possibility here because they don't have a true like deep safety, right? Yeah. Like a guy that can play from a little bit more depth. So I think he's interesting. I think McCoy's interesting as well. It's just, I mean, it's all at the end of the day, it's going to come down to is if whether the Panthers are one of the teams that feel okay about the knee comparatively to some others. But I would probably go offensive tackle or Thieneman just to be a little bit more firm and a little bit more comfortable with it, if that makes sense. So I would throw out Caleb Lomu, or I would throw out Dylan Thieneman. Those are kind of the two guys. I don't know if we want to do a tiebreaker on that, but that's kind of my thought process. I don't know, Kyle, like, look, I think that actually if they're going to take offensive tackle here, they would probably go Proctor because I just think that Proctor's going to go higher than maybe we think he's going to be. Like, that's just the vibe he gives me. But I'm just not comfortable with him, especially inside the top 20. That's just my thoughts of Proctor, though.
And I'm kind of that way with Lomu, where I think he's got a long way to go. Like I'm totally down with Dylan Thieneman to be the pick. And like, I think that's a nice middle ground for stuff that we talked through. But like Lomu for me is, I think he needs to get stronger. I think he's not as consistent with his landmarks. I think you see some moments of kind of a delay in processing when there's movement at the snap with the front and where my landmark goes and what do I do? And the baseline skills are really good, but I feel like he's super raw. And maybe you could argue, hey, Carolina with the Walker contract, they don't need him to be ready to play year one. But that just, to me, it feels like you're trying to stay up with the rat race in the NFC South and to draft a year ahead of a need with where you signed Walker, to me, is kind of cutting your nose off to spite your face to argue positional value for tackle. So I'm good with Thieneman if you are.
I am. I like Dylan Thieneman. I think he's a good football player. I know Tyler wasn't a big Thieneman guy who just on last pick, but I think Dylan Thieneman is a good player. And if you're sitting here, we're like, man, this board sucks, then I think draft a guy you believe can play. So we'll go with Thieneman there.
I think Kyle, you made a good point too. Like, I think Lomu does feel more of a Philadelphia Eagles pick in terms of being a year ahead, maybe of like Lane Johnson or something like that. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I just want like J.C. Horn, when healthy, he's been healthy the last couple of years, is one of the best press man corners in the NFL, and I want him to be aggressive. And I think a guy like Thieneman could allow you to be an aggressive player in front of him because he's got a little bit of that, he can make up for mistakes to a degree.
I dig it.
All right, Mauricio is back for his second pick. Cowboys on the board at 20. Back-to-back Ducks. Thieneman was maybe an option for you at 12. But so you missed on him. I don't know. Does that make you think maybe if you went Thieneman at 12, you could get Colton Hood at 20?
Yeah, maybe. I think,
or you could just get Jermon McCoy and just have both these guys. They haven't played together yet. They never played together.
That would be so fun to watch. But I don't see the Cowboys doing safety at number 12 just because it's the one position that they really addressed in free agency by signing Jalen Thompson, and I think they really want to hit all bases basically, and I don't see them at 12, maybe at 20 if he's there. Right now, looking at the board, don't love it. I don't think anyone does right at this point. Everyone's going to be wanting to trade back come draft night, and especially the Cowboys with no second-round pick. You just know they want to add draft capital in a scenario like this. I would be looking defense again. I would be looking at edge rushers. I would be looking at linebackers, but it may be too early for one of the linebackers here for Dallas, even though they absolutely need one, which is why a lot of people think they will trade up and get someone like Sonny Styles. But even though he's not everyone's cup of tea, I'm looking at Keldrick Falk right now out of Auburn at 20. It makes sense for the Cowboys, right? He's a big dude. Christian Parker, the new defensive coordinator, has been all about multiplicity on his defense, and I think Falk can give you some of that, lining up everywhere in that defensive line, being that big guy at edge rusher. 21 years old. Will McClay, the Cowboys' de facto GM when it comes to the draft, talked a big game about not falling for trades, but I don't think Keldrick Falk is just falling for empty promises. I think he's a real dude who can play. I know people complain about his production, but I like Keldrick Falk at this spot. I think the Cowboys would like to trade down and pick him later on, but in this case, at number 20 overall, I think they pick him. I think they go with him, and they love their pick at number 20, honestly.
Would you think Cowboys fans would like the pairing if they were flipped, Falk at 12 and Hood at 20? I mean, you got both of them. It doesn't matter. One guy's just getting paid a little bit more than the other guy.
That's a good question. And I think it's maybe even likelier in the eyes of many people. I kind of view the Colton Hood situation as one of those where they maybe like him better than other corners, and they want to make sure they get him. And then at 20, maybe they're comfortable with be it Keldrick Falk or Malachi Lawrence or maybe somebody like Akeem Messidor even. So I think they're more comfortable waiting on edge just because it's arguably deeper. But you could say the same about a corner, and maybe somebody like Chris Johnson, right, out of San Diego State at 20 would make a lot of sense as well. But yeah, I think some people would like Keldrick Falk at 12 better than Hood.
Ryan, your thoughts on this?
I would be conflicted on it, and not because I don't like Keldrick Falk. I actually feel like I'm above consensus on Falk for the most part, because I have always been a bet on traits on the edge guy. Like, that's just kind of always been my ideology from an evaluation perspective. And it's not like he's never been a productive pass rusher. That's one thing that I think people miss on a little bit. In 2024, 7 sacks, 52 pressures. Like, he hasn't always just been this full-on run stopper who can't rush the passer. For whatever reason this year, 2 sacks, 32 pressures. It fell off a cliff. Why is the reason for that? Most guys this time of year are getting asked hard questions of off-field issues, pass arrests, like really tough things there, right? But for a player like Falk, you're just nearly trying to understand, you look like you were an ascending player out after 2024. What happened in 2025? Was it that Auburn was a shit show and you weren't able to develop in a bad situation? Was it something that you did? Was it bad weights and you had to take some weight off your frame during the draft process? The question needs to be answered in terms of why you fell off a cliff. But if he is that ascending player we thought he was in 2024, this might end up being a value. It's just ultimately the background research that these teams are doing. And you have to make sure that you're settled with Keldrick. But the talent is, I mean, guys that are 6'6", 276 don't just move like him all the time. Like, he is a very gifted athlete. It's about getting the most out of him ultimately.
I'm Mauricio. Cowboys get corner and edge rusher there. And now we bring in, for the Steelers pick at 21, Rob Gregson here, who covers the Pittsburgh Steelers. Rob, here's your board. It's a weird one. Nobody's really liked their board the last couple of picks. Ever since Tyler picked Kenyon Sadiq 18th to the Vikings, it's been a couple tough ones here. What are you looking at from Pittsburgh's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, immediately you look at these top positions that are available right here, and what immediately jumps off the screen to me, somebody who they met with, Emmanuel McNeil Warren. The Pittsburgh Steelers, if they host you on a top 30 visit or a 30 visit, they almost always take a player from that list in the first round. But I got to tell you what, I actually don't mind this board for the Steelers. The fact that Jermon McCoy is still here, the fact that a KC Concepcion is still here, Omar Cooper Jr., and then, of course, McNeil Warren. That's a lot of different options at a lot of positions of need for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, honestly, I would be fine if they stuck at 21 and they had this many or this plethora on the table here.
All right. Where are you going? I mean, that's four guys. McCoy falling is the knee situation, and nobody knows the medical, what one team's perspective is on the other or the other. But what are you thinking between those few options?
Yeah, it's an easy one for me. No doubt you got to take Jermon McCoy here.
Okay.
If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, right, I understand, you have Joey Porter Jr. on one side. Of course, you just signed Jamel Dean in free agency. Little bit older, dealt with some injury concerns of his own, I should say. And if you look at the Steelers' draft history, they're a team that really doesn't mind injury red flags. I mean, they took Darnell Washington in the late third round when there were teams worried about his knee. They took Corey Trice in the seventh round. He's still on the roster because of his knee. Peyton Wilson because of his knee. So Jermon McCoy, who's coming off a pro day where he ran the 4.3s, who has, as I'm sure Ryan and Kyle would agree with, the best corner tape from the 2024 season in this class. If he's anywhere close to pick 21 and you can have the potential of Joey Porter Jr. on one side and McCoy on the other, it's a no-brainer in my opinion.
Kyle, you want to start?
Yeah, I like the fit a lot. That secondary really went through the ringer last year. It was a lot of churn with waiver wires and safeties, and then Jalen Ramsey ends up getting kicked from corner to safety, and that whole transition. So Rob mentioned the Jamil Dean signing, and somebody that's picking in the back half of the first round. If Jermon McCoy does get there is that intersection where the risk is worth the reward relative to the pick. And I don't mind it now coming in outside the top 20. And I think Rob is smart to take advantage of it and gobble it up, because if McCoy ends up being okay, man, that's a heck of a group of Porter Jr., Jamel Dean short term, McCoy long term. You kind of flip the script on that secondary in one fell swoop.
There's one former player turned media member that can be the Velcro between this fit. Ramon Foster, longtime Steelers offensive lineman, former Tennessee Vol, who does both Pittsburgh and Vols media because Ramon doesn't stop accepting new jobs. If the Steelers want to know everything about Jermon McCoy, they can figure that out. And so I think that's something that, makes everybody feel a bit more comfortable. So Ryan, any thoughts on McCoy dropping to 21?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been hesitant on it, but if we were just based this off a 2024 film, I think he's a top 5 player in this class. Now, that gets dicey because we're talking about a guy that we haven't seen in a very long time, and I know he had a good pro day, but just kind of hearing the feedback that there are some teams that are more comfortable than others about the knee does make it a risk inside of the first round. But again, if you promise me that he's back to that 2024 film where he was a dominant player at 19 years old in the SEC, I think that you got extreme value at this spot. You just have to hope that the medicals check out and that the long term is okay.
All right, the largest fall to this point, McCoy, 15th player on the A to Z board, 21st to Pittsburgh. So, Rob, appreciate that. And now the Chargers on the clock at 22. Kyle, I'll let you start.
Yeah, I would like to check out the edge rushers,
All right.
see what this board looks like. We'll flex off some of the tools here for the sim, right?
Yeah. We can
there's
show
a
the
name,
guys that have been picked if we want to toggle that thing.
There's a name that is red hot that we I think are going to have a really good chance of seeing go in the first round here. And his name's Malachi Lawrence for UCF. I like Tuli Tuipulotu a lot for the Chargers, but the Khalil Mack 1-year contract rolling situation feels like it's going to start coming to a head here pretty soon. I think Lawrence would be an awesome third pass rusher. Last year it was like Bud Dupree, right? And like that was the guy. I think a chance to bring in Malachi Lawrence prematurely a year ahead of time. You should be trusting the offense with Mike McDaniel coming in to score points, play with a lead, let the pass rush ability that he has really showcase itself. I think he's got a massive ceiling. I was really impressed when I found out that he was playing this past year. He told some of us at the combine between 255 and 260. So you're not worried about the mass. It's more just the consistency of using your hands and defeating blocks. And I think he's a great candidate to outperform some of these other names that are ranked in the same stratosphere or in front of him in this year's draft. And I'd love to see him land with the Chargers here.
Yeah, in the video we did on Sunday of our trade battles with the top 10, Dexter Lawrence changing that dynamic, I ended up with the Titans taking Malachi Lawrence 24. And I thought that was I'm glad that you are on Malachi Lawrence a couple picks ahead of me. So the people in my mentions on Sunday afternoon can chill out. So I'm Malachi Lawrence. Ryan, your thoughts here?
I think that Malachi is a divisive player in the first round, just in terms of what you need from him immediately. But I think that the Chargers are one situation with Tooley, with Khalil Mack back for one more year, that you can be a little judicious with just how you're going to use him and develop him. And I think him working with a guy like Khalil Mack for a year as kind of that de facto tutor can help him in a lot of ways. I think especially because the Chargers' other big need is on the interior offensive line, and that board is just not there right now because I don't think any of the tackles that are on the board are a great fit to potentially transition inside early. So I'm okay with betting on the edge because I do think that is a spot that definitely needs to upgrade.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Here we bring in our Philadelphia Eagles guy, RB. RB, what's going on? Welcome in. 23rd pick here for the Philadelphia Eagles. The A.J. Brown predicted trade, the telegraph trade from months away has continued to been reported on. So RB, tell us what you're looking at with this board here. Let me know if you need me to poke around the simulator a little bit. What are the Eagles thinking in this situation?
Yeah, man, it's been an uneventful season, looking forward to the draft. But, man, it's just I have AJ fatigue at this point, and I'm almost.
Hey, I've been there, man. Been there.
Listen, I hear you, man. I'm almost tempted, to think about wide receiver here. But let me tell you, man, this draft is lined up perfectly for Howie Roseman. Invest in the depth in the trenches. I mean, that is Howie's philosophy going back years and years. And there's still a lot of good interior offensive linemen on the board here. I think if the board falls this way, it's pretty easy. Caden Proctor, that's been one of the guys on the Eagles roster or, on their draft roster. Howie loves his Alabama and Georgia guys. This guy's 6'7". It says there 352 pounds, explosive athlete. I mean, this is like a layup for Howie Roseman. The Eagles need to get back to their strong running game, right? Last year, they were injured. It was an up and down season, but mainly beyond the AJ and the drama stuff, they just didn't have their run game, and Landon Dickerson has teased retirement. Lane Johnson's in his upper 30s. They need a guy that they can invest in for the now and the future as well. And even if Proctor could slide in and play potentially some guard in the event of an injury, I think it makes him very valuable for an Eagles pick here at 23.
I feel confident saying the four of us could collectively squat 815. Maybe three of us, but the four of us for sure, we got that easily. But yeah, Caden Proctor, that a very large man. Ryan, I'll let you start with the fit to Philly with what RB just kind of had there.
Yeah, that 352 was after fasting for 2 weeks for the combine because he was back up to like 358 at the pro day like 2 weeks later. So, that wasn't his actual playing weight. I mean, there were reports that he was up around like 380 at some points, right? And then he kind of had to cut the weight down a little bit. So, as RB said, he is a massive dude. I have question marks on him in terms of just sticking at tackle long term because I just think that there's some deficiencies in terms of flexibility and change of direction. But I do think that Philadelphia is one of the spots that if he's going to go in the first round is one that makes the most sense, right? Because even though Jeff Stoutland is not there as the offensive coordinator, they have just traditionally done very well of developing the offensive line over the years. And I think that him getting a year to learn, potentially under Lane, to maybe take over right tackle in 2027, but also potentially compete inside with Tyler Steen for that right guard spot. I think that you have upside to have that opportunity in year one and potentially slide out. So I'm good with the fit in terms of if there's a spot that I think Caden Proctor can be successful on in the first round, the Eagles are on that short list to be able to maximize his potential.
Kyle, quick thoughts?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I love the offensive line investment and kind of getting ahead of kind of what feels like is inevitably starting to come. And short term, they had success with Mekhi Becton, so I feel pretty inspired by this pick. I think Philly's a great spot to maybe breathe some life back into the tush push too. Who knows?
Oh no, the NFL doesn't worry about that play anymore. Now that the Eagles can't do it anymore, I don't even think they brought it up in the last couple of months.
I think the only thing I heard about it is, we're not going to try to vote on it again. That's the only thing I heard about the tush push. So
exactly.
Caden Proctor is going to bring it back, man. Caden Proctor is going to bring it back. So
well, not the new play in Philly is the slot screen to your pulling guard. However, you can make that not be a penalty, but Caden Proctor can do it.
Well, it'd be anything better than Patullo drew up last year. So, I think, I think that's a positive looking forward.
RB, thanks, man. All right, so the Eagles go Caden Proctor there, another big body Alabama guy, and so we bring back. Let's see, we're Brandon Little here as the Browns back on the clock for pick number 2. Brandon, you went with Cornell Tate, staying home inside the state of Ohio, wide receiver, Ohio State at 6. What are you thinking here? I can poke around the board however you want me to. For the Browns at 24, Proctor just went at 23. But the offensive line has not really had that run that maybe a lot of us might have expected, but the run could probably start now with Proctor and maybe wherever the Browns want to go.
Yeah, this draft has really worked out perfect for the Browns for what they need because they're not getting a quarterback, so they need to upgrade wide receiver and the offensive line. They've done pretty well through free agency, but that left tackle hole's still there. And right here, they can take Utah's Caleb Lomu, and he's a natural left tackle in college, athletic, should fit what Munker wants to do. I think he falls right into the lap here.
Kyle, you want to start with Caleb Lomu, 24 to the Browns?
Yeah, so I think he's got a good appeal from an athletic profile standpoint, and he's young, right? So I think those are the two things that stand out where you've got a lot of growth opportunity. I like that if you're going to pick Lomu here, natural left tackle, so you're not doing the projection. I do think he's a player that has a lot of growth that he needs. And I think playing first year of a system, got some veterans on the interior offensive line. I could see this being a situation where it's a softer transition for him, but I do think he's one of those guys that his 3-year projection is much more favorable than his 1-year projection because I think he is super raw and I do think he needs to get a little stronger. So the fact that Cleveland as an organization with the regime changes that they've made, you could convince me that the timeline for Lomu matches the timeline for the team to kind of ramp things up. So from that perspective, you're comfortable letting him grow and quote unquote fail forward by playing. I think you're hopeful that you've got yourself a franchise left tackle based on the uncoachables, and it's going to be on the coaching staff to help mold him and help him become the player that he has the potential to be.
Ryan, do you like the Tate Lomu pairing here?
I do, because I think at 24 you're taking a little bit of a gamble on traits to a degree, to Kyle's point. But I do think that, and I also do think if this is the pick that happens, Cleveland fans need to be patient with Lomu because it's not patience as in you're not going to see him. It's patience as in it's going to be baptism by fire. Like it's not, it's going to be rough for a few games. It's going to be. You want ascension down the stretch of the season and hopefully a potential bump year 2. Like you're hoping, as Kyle said, like that 3-year plan of developments. But the long term can be huge. But also the Browns are not a team that expect to win a ton, I don't think, in 2026. So you can afford to be a little bit patient with them. So I think that upside is there. And then also, not that we are prisoners to the past, but the last time the Browns drafted a college right tackle and in the vein of a Max Iannaccio or a Blake Miller to potentially play left tackle in Jedrick Wills, that experiment looked okay initially, but then it fizzled out and it didn't end up working also. So I'm curious if like they hesitate for that ideology of college right tackle to left tackle and they go with a guy that has played left tackle and they have 2 years of film and hopefully the developmental building blocks to become a really good starting left tackle long term.
Now, Brandon, before we let you go, Mauricio when he came on at 12 and hated his board. He was like, I would have called Brandon and the Browns to move up to 6. What would it have taken in your mind for the Cowboys? Would you be open to that? Passing up on Carnell Tate at 6 to go at 12, maybe, I don't know if 12 and 20, how that math works out from 12 to 6, but what would your thoughts be if Dallas came calling?
Yeah, the Browns would likely have to give up 39 to get 12 and 20 back. They'd be swapping 2 picks for 2 picks, and they'd move up on both. I'd probably do it with how this draft board fell, because all the receivers were there. The offensive tackles were there early at 6, and there was a good chance you could get a similar player, maybe Mekhi Lemon, one of those top receivers, still at 12, and then get your tackle later at 24.
Lemon. Yeah, both Tyson and Lemon right there. And then obviously the tackles, you could have had a Proctor or Lomu, your choice there at 20. So cool. Well, hey, if we're doing trades, maybe next year we'll do some trades here. So Brandon has 2 picks for the Browns there. Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate that. As we move on to pick 25 with Cole Noble bringing into the studio here for the Chicago Bears. Cole, here's the board. You got a little second there to watch Brandon go through the Browns' second pick. What are you looking for Chicago at 25 with this, how it played out?
Yeah, this is just an awful way that this board went down, in my opinion. I'm not really a fan of what I'm looking at here. A lot of tackles are off the board. A lot of edge rushers are off the board. Really, that's the 2 big positions that they've met with. I mean, you look at the first round options the Bears have met with. It's been a lot of offensive tackles. Caleb Lomo was one of their second offensive tackles they brought in on a top 30 visit. He just went off the board. You're looking at offensive tackle 6 or 7 at this point, and I'm not sure that's really the best scenario you want to go with in the first round. So edge rusher, Malachi Lawrence is off the board, Keldrick Folks off the board, Akeem Messidor off the board. Those are pretty much my top 3 edge rushers that I would fit for the Bears. Cassius Howell, I don't think fits the Dennis Allen mold. TJ Parker is an option. He's an intriguing option, but again, like you're looking at a later pick here for the edge rushers where, so many have come off the board already. And looking at that safety position, the Bears have a hole there. And I think, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, he might be the new Pat Tillman, the peanut punch coming back to Chicago again. And I think that's really the way we want to go here with this pick.
Going with EMW. All right.
Yeah.
The
Fill that
Toledo
hole
guy.
for the safety position.
There you go. Kevin Byard going to New England to rejoin with Mike Vrabel. First Mike Vrabel reference in the first 100 minutes of this show. Ryan, EMW 25, the Bears. I think Cole was right. Like the top edge and tackles all gone right there. It would have been a reach to go into one of those spots, but solid value with McNeil-Warren.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you keep him in the Midwest. I think that he brings that kind of the Chicago Bears defense. While it wasn't efficiently good last year, they created a lot of turnovers, right? And as Cole kind of pointed to there, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren does that in high volumes, whether it's intercepting the football over the years or it's forcing fumbles. So he is a player that is always around the football. Obviously brings a lot of size to the profile. He can play near the line of scrimmage. He can play short zone, can kind of be that intermediate robber. Like he can do a lot of things for a defense schematically, which I think are super interesting. And I think that ultimately, like, you want to continue to pour into that defense because the offense is, I mean, we saw it. Like, it's exciting. When it's clicking under Caleb Williams, it's a really promising and young unit that has showed a lot of flashes. If they get the defense now to kind of become a little bit more of an efficient unit by also creating those turnovers and kind of marrying those two together, I think that it is going to be a very dangerous team. So I like Emmanuel McNeil-Warren at this spot. I mean, there's some like Daniel Jeremiah that have been projecting him at like number 11. So there's a lot of fans in the industry. And I think at 25, it is just fine value for what the board fell to you.
Kyle, your thoughts on EMW, and then if it's not him, where would you have gone with the Bears with the board?
Yeah, I have a late one on Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, so I think the value is appropriate. Yeah. I really like the fit to kind of complement another bigger safety in Kobe Bryant on the back end. So I don't think you can really go to war with Cam Lewis as a starting safety. So I'm digging it from that perspective, and McNeil-Warren should be somebody that this coaching staff has a lot of fun moving around. And Dennis Allen, I think, will get a lot of impact plays Adam McNeil-Warren. I think that's kind of where his pedigree lies. So I dig it from that perspective a lot. If it wasn't Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, I know we've got Grady Jarrett. I know we brought in a couple of names as rotational guys, but I do wonder if this wouldn't have been the first logical defensive tackle spot that we really hit, whether it's Caden McDonald or Christian Miller or Peter Woods, any one of those guys. I think they're all kind of stylistically, there's some overlap with McDonald and Miller, but I think Miller's probably a little bit of a higher passing down player, but McDonald's a better run defender, even though they're both kind of point of attack standout players. And Woods obviously is would you have picked him as an heir to Grady Jarrett? Like, I think maybe there would have been some compelling conversations to be had there. Caleb Banks is the most physically talented, but there's foot injuries and kind of the consistency of play that's been a really hard sell for the last 2 years. So I think Cole did a nice job making the right pick based off just what the board looks like to me.
Yeah. Austin, can I ask Cole actually a question off of that?
Yeah.
Like if you had to take a defensive tackle, because I've actually been yelled at by Bears fans on a mock draft before because I gave him Caden McDonald. They're like, we need a penetrator. Give me Peter Woods. Do you feel like that is the best route if you had to go defensive tackle, that you would go for a penetrator, or would you just take who you deem to be, if Caden McDonald was who you thought was the best, would you just opt for him even though he's more of a point of attack player?
Yeah, I think that's just more of an argument of who's in control in that draft room. I don't think Caden McDonald really fits that Dennis Allen mold. He wants, a shorter, a lighter, explosive guy in the middle of his defensive line. That's not Caden McDonald. I mean, he's, big bodied. Peter Woods fits that. I think his, athleticism is a little bit to be desired, especially, his potential and his, ceiling for a first round pick. So I have issues with both players in the first round. I'd rather have Grayson Halton in the second round. I think that'd be the perfect fit for a Dennis Allen, to where you get a need in the first round at safety, and then you get that long-term D tackle in the second would be my ideal spot.
All right. Good stuff from Cole there as the Bears go EMW at 25, rolling along here, the last handful of picks as we bring in Adam Zintek for the Buffalo Bills. Adam, here's the Bills board. What is the survivor of the firestorm in Buffalo going to do here with Bane in his room? Is he going to, you can't draft somebody and blame it on the head coach now. So what's he going to do here with Buffalo's spot at this 26th board?
I'm really liking the fact that Peter Woods is still available. However, I am team get Josh Allen as many weapons as humanly possible. KC Concepcion still being on the board is a huge win for me. So I am going to draft him here. This might be a spot that I'd be willing, if I were Brandon Beane, to trade out of to go into the second round to get some day 2 picks in there, some more day 2 picks. But for the sake of this mock, I really love KC Concepcion. I know that it kind of backfires on players when they're about to be drafted and they go, you're going to regret not picking me, but I love that fire. I love exactly what he would bring to the table. Brandon Beane said that the trade for DJ Moore would not stop them from taking a wide receiver high in this class. And that's why with KC Concepcion on the board, that is going to be my official pick with the number 26 selection.
All right, Kyle, your reaction.
Yeah, they got to get the wide receiver situation figured out, right? Like they've put in enough investments into it, enough Josh Palmer, Curtis Samuel level contracts, and have absolutely nothing to show for it. So it's time to quit farting around here. And then obviously with the premium investment going at wide receiver, you're just probably going to have to get that playoff run and bank on Josh being one of the best quarterbacks in the league and make the plays in the big games to win it for you. And that's the script you're going to have to play. And I think some of that's amplified by the Jim Leonard DC change, where it was the Brandon Beane or the Sean McDermott show for a decade. And, now there's a pretty significant scheme change that goes with Jim Leonard coming as well. So that's going to take a little bit of time. So lean on your offense, lean on your quarterback, and let's please stop giving wide receiver fours $10 million year contracts would be my play.
Yeah, I echo a lot of that same. I would also say that, and we could have asked Cole in this, I guess, but Chicago feels like also a trade back spot for if a couple wide receivers are on the board, because you have the Buffalo Bills and San Francisco back to back that could potentially invest in this style of player. I think, as Adam kind of mentioned a little bit too, like Casey's the type that I think you need in that wide receiver room too, because you got Josh Palmer because you wanted to hopefully create some explosive plays vertically, and obviously he didn't give you a ton of that last year. Khalil Shakur is a really good player, but he's more of that like short to intermediate separator, more of a slot option. You need a guy that can create explosive plays in that offense. You just don't really have that right now, and I think Casey brings a lot of that juice to the table.
And he's a local boy. I mean, at the end of the day, you love to see that too. I think he's from the Rochester area, so you love to see a local guy get drafted around the area. And yeah, like I said, the biggest decision that went into me taking Concepcion is just get the best quarterback on the planet, as many weapons as humanly possible to be as dominant as he can be.
We've had a few of those, maybe not like hometown local, but like college local. Cardinal Tate to the Browns, Mansour Delane to the Saints. Now Casey Concepcion back to the New York Buffalo area. So Adam, appreciate it a bunch.
Low moving costs, man. Low moving costs.
That's right. That's right.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, Adam. All right, on the board now, San Francisco at 27. So we just got us three here for the next couple picks before Charles comes back for the Chiefs second. So I guess, yeah, two. So San Francisco, what are you guys thinking? I guess I'll toss it to Kyle for this one.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a bummer because this would have been like my Lomu spot where, the 49ers obviously figured out the short-term contract bridge at left tackle with Trent Williams, but Trent's getting up there a little bit. So, obviously they put the contract extension on to kind of smooth that over a little bit, but I do think they need to start thinking about a long-term plan there. There's an obvious need at wide receiver that I think you can probably have the conversation with the Brandon Ayuk situation being the 49ers being petty kings and dragging him all the way through the early part of the offseason. And Juwan Jennings is an expired contract that's out there on free agency. And Ricky Pearsall, I love Ricky coming out of Florida, but man, we've just had bad luck breaks and have not been able to stay available. So I think wide receivers probably the place that I'm most interested in attending. And amongst those wide receivers, I do think Omar Cooper feels like the right run after catch physical player to go into that system and be another one of those guys that can create with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, seems like a great Shanahan fit.
It does. That was actually where I was going to go if you would have started with me, Austin, because I think that you obviously brought Mike Evans over, who's more of that outside-oriented wide receiver. Pearsall is kind of that Z guy that's going to run a lot of really crisp routes when healthy. You don't really have a guy that's going to do that slot work. I think they gave Christian Kirk like a low-end deal or something like that to kind of fill that role on the short term. But like Omar Cooper, I think, and I know JT Runke's happy that we're getting Cooper off the board because I know his big thing has been he's not making it to the second round. So we'll get him off the board here because I think that his style, the after catch ability, explosiveness, in and out of breaks, I think that will play really well in a Shanahan offense.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. Maybe the tackle Ianachor could be something to look at if that makes any sense. If it's not Omar Cooper at the spot, but I think Omar Cooper Jr. is a pretty easy slam dunk. Now for the Texans, there's some defensive front guys here that just would be the rich getting richer, the nastier getting nastier. Ryan, I'll let you start with the Texans at 28 with this board.
So it's funny, I'm still holding stock in Peter Woods a little bit. I am a little admittedly scared away based upon the 2025 film. So I am going to opt for the floor here. And if I had to make the pick, and I'd love to hear what Kyle has to say about it, but like I would go with Tate McDonald just to upgrade that interior. I think that, he's a butt kicker in the run game. Even if he never develops into much of a pass rusher, just the impact he has for getting guys one-on-one opportunities and making second level a lot cleaner for linebackers, scraping and filling holes. I think that he brings a lot of value, and I'm imagining a world where less attention gets on Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, right? And having a front in that level and that hype and that much talent, I think is a really interesting evaluation opportunity. So Tate McDonald makes everybody around him better, and that's what I would personally do here at this board because interior offensive line is the other spot that I would look at, but I just think that Tate McDonald is too good of a football player to pass up.
You co-sign?
Yeah, I'm down with that, especially because as I brain farted on Logan Hall earlier on the show, the Logan Hall ad here, I like a lot. Like Tommy Togiai has shown you a little something. you obviously have the pass rush group that you have with the $50 million edge rusher and Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter. So they got an interior rush player already. Now go out and get, especially here in the late 20s, right? Like you're a little bit less worried about like impact plays. Now the conversation shifts a little bit to how much is he going to, like how many snaps are we going to get? And if you're getting first and second downs and short yardages with Caden McDonald, you're probably getting 550, 600 snaps out of a guy here. That's a great contribution for a role that you really don't have filled on the roster.
So Caden McDonald, 28 to the Texans, and it's hard to not notice it here, but we're 4 picks left in the first round. And I just see all those Clemson Tiger Paw logos right there.
Just like their season.
Man, you're right. Just these guys, just a conundrum of just figuring out what the hell went wrong with Clemson last year. So 29, the Chiefs back on the board, bringing back Charles for his second pick here. You kind of shocked everything. You went with Monroe Freeling that got the board going. Mauricio wanted to one up you by going Colton Hood at 12 to the Cowboys there. So where do you see the Chiefs going with the board here, the last few picks, the end of the first round?
I mean, this is a pretty good board for the Chiefs based on their needs, right? They could go interior defensive line. They have cornerback needs. There are a couple cornerbacks on the board, edge rushers. You got a local guy in Cassius Howell. You got TJ Parker sitting there. If you want to get crazy and go wide receiver, Denzel Boston, maybe. So a lot of different options to kind of choose from. I'm tempted by Caleb Banks because the Chris Jones comparisons are there. He's just a guy that I feel like learning from Jones would help him in his career. And like, I mean, the Chiefs, they need to improve the pass rush. You know, putting Jones and Banks next to each other on the interior, no matter who you have on the edges. I mean, you have George on the edges, maybe Ashton Gelati, maybe you add a guy later in this draft, but that's going to be really tough for some of those interior offensive lines to handle if you put those two guys together. Obviously, there's the health concerns with the broken foot, his pad level. Sometimes he plays too high, but that's why a guy like Chris Jones, I feel like, can really help him, right? That was Chris Jones' big knock coming out of Mississippi State, and one of the reasons why he kind of went a little bit later is that, you know, his pad level, and he still had to kind of put some things together. I think I'm going to have to go with Caleb Banks here.
Okay. Ryan, I'll let you start on the injury, the foot. How many times has he broken this foot? Do we know? It feels like it's definitely multiple, right?
So he injured it, then he re-aggravated it when he was coming back, and then he broke it the night before or the day before the combine, right before testing. So it's and it's the same foot. I do know, and I don't know how much has been out there, but I was able to confirm that the last injury, the last break, was a different part of the foot. I don't know if that makes that better or worse. I don't really know like how to contextualize that, but it's just some context, I guess.
The foot is so interesting though, right? You got all these tiny little bones in there. So I feel like I feel like a break without like a ton of context. It could be something really serious or it could be something pretty minor.
Yeah, I'm thinking out loud here. Is it better to take that injury situation at the end of the first round, knowing you've got 5 years of control potentially, to let it to be patient, or is that still extra risk that you might be on the hook for if it doesn't work out? I think that's a tough spot to kind of be in. You got to lean on the doctors.
I would say as long as you're okay with the situation, I think that it's an interesting investment in a first round that we have all admitted is not a strong one in terms of a lot of true first round grades, and taking a gamble on a guy that has, I mean, let's be honest, like if he played a full season to his anywhere near his potential and he had a clear bill of health, we're probably talking about a top 10 pick in this class, most likely. I mean, like he's that type of talent, you know, and I think we're talking about a player, and the fact that he tested like that on a broken foot is actually outrageous, but clearly Charles is a height, weight, speed guy, right? He's like, I'm investing in height, weight, speed in this class. We're going to look great coming off the bus, if nothing else. But I think that this is a gamble without question. But again, if he's healthy, we could look back on this pick in a couple years and be like, the Chiefs somehow got one of the best players in the 2026 draft at pick 29 because of obviously some of the situations that are happening. So it's a gamble, but if it pays off, it can pay off handsomely.
I will add one thing. The Chiefs brought him in for a top 30 visit. They usually do that with guys who have medicals that they're interested in. And, you know, if the Chiefs training staff signs off on it, I mean, we saw what happened with Josh Simmons last year, right? They signed off on that. It worked out pretty well for him. It probably could have worked out better if he didn't disappear during the middle of the season. But hey, we'll say the health part, that worked out well for him.
All right. There's Charles, Freeling, and Banks, two big dudes from the SEC to Kansas City. All right, it's the three of us to bring it home. Kyle, your Dolphins are on the clock at 30. Ruben Bane Jr. falls to them at 11. At the very top of the first round, what are you looking at here for Miami?
Yeah, so I'm going to invoke the words of General Manager John Eric Sullivan when he took the job, which is we're going to build this team from the inside out. And we've talked about how this team has a lot of needs. I'm looking at two right tackles that are still on the board in Blake Miller and Maxi Honachor, who are I'm feeling very fortunate that they are both still on the board here at 30, just because we went through a pretty brutal run of guys where maybe tackles go. You know, where you hear a lot of buzz about 7 first-round offensive tackles. We're at 5 now. I am going to make it 6. There's no question that the ceiling is higher with Honachor. I like Blake Miller's floor a little bit more right now. He had awesome testing. Like I was blown away by what the athletic profile looked like in a 54-year starter or 54-game starter. The team has Austin Jackson, who they facilitated a pay cut for this offseason. He's in the final year of his deal. He's playing for $5 million plus incentives. He's missed at least half of the year each of the last 2 seasons. He has guard experience, so maybe Miller, they feel comfortable and they want to play him at right tackle, and they'll move Austin Jackson inside to guard and compete there. So I'm going to take Blake Miller, go with the Charles-inspired big man double dip with the pass rusher and a tackle, and I'll give the Dolphins some trench play reinforcements at 30.
And Dabo exhales a little bit.
Yeah, get one of these guys
Just
in
a
here.
little bit.
Well, Blake's the only Clemson Tiger that got better this year, it feels like, right?
Right.
Like, he's
That
the only
makes
one that
sense.
got
Yeah.
like exceedingly. It's funny how that kind of works out. And there was someone a couple weeks ago that said that they did pick Blake Miller to be the first Clemson player that's going to come off the board. So, I mean, obviously that happens in this situation. I also like it, Kyle, because like you need some hits on this roster, right? Like when you have so many needs. I agree. Like, Max, I think Honachor is like so appealing from an upside perspective, but he's also a guy that is still relatively inexperienced. I mean, he didn't start playing offensive line until he was in junior college. Like, he had never played offensive line before. So he's still raw in some areas, but Blake is just not only a really good athlete and kind of brings those check boxes from an athleticism perspective, but he does bring a floor, and he got better every year, right? Like I remember watching him in his first couple years where it was like, all right, man, dude's light in the ass, right? Like he needs to get stronger. Like he just needs to. He's gotten a little stronger each and every year, gotten better. So I think it makes a whole lot of sense. That's actually where I would have also gone if I would have made the selection. So we agree there.
Okay. Mike Vrabel and the Patriots up here at 31. AJ Brown going to be on this roster here in a little over a month after June 1st. What do the Patriots do?
I kind of like Maxi Honachor here, not because of the Will Campbell guard tackle thing, but because Morgan Moses is also in a last year of his deal at right tackle, and he's aging very fast. So I think that not only does Max bring the heir apparent to right tackle for a good offensive line, an improving offensive line, but I also think that he can serve insurance in case something happens to Will Campbell, whether that is injury or he doesn't take a step forward or whatever. So I kind of like Max as an offensive tackle investment for Vrabel and co.
Kyle, you like it?
I like it a lot. I go ahead and run that one in. I feel like that's a home run value for them with
and
a
this
sneaker
is
another tackle in here.
Now that's our 7 tackles, right?
Yep.
So that's kind of what everybody's expecting. It maybe started a little bit later or was more spread out than maybe we thought. But overall, I think that makes a lot of sense for New England. So bringing it home with Seattle, the Super Bowl champions. You know, Ryan, you're a Notre Dame guy. So and there's been a lot of in this thing with Jadarian Price I don't think that's not you though. I've listened to enough of your draft takes to know that you're not a Jadarian Price at 32 type of guy. So, but where do the Seahawks start here?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm called a hater in Notre Dame land because I'm just a little bit lower on Jadarian than I think some people are. But it's okay. I think that two guys, if I could throw out there, and again, Kyle, if you want to throw more into a bucket, we can figure this out. One is Chris Johnson, the corner out of San Diego State. They lost Reek Woolen this offseason, who I know was very up and down, but from a corner perspective, I think there's some investment that could happen there. And then the other one, which I bugged JT a couple hours before the show because I was like, hey, just in case, get a Traden Stokes graphic ready for us, the safety out of Arizona, because I am so fascinated by Traden Stokes, getting a little more first-round buzz down the stretch. I've heard Dane Brugler mention it. I've heard Daniel Jeremiah mention it. They lost Kobe Bryant this offseason, who was like a versatile player to the Bears, who I think is a little bit of an underrated loss there, right? I don't know, man. I think Stokes could bring some value there, and I think he's getting a little bit more buzz down the stretch here. So a couple guys I want to throw in the bucket there.
Put in Stokes.
I
love his tape.
Yes!
I love his tape. His tape is so good. And like, yeah, he had a knee. Yeah, he's a little bit of an older prospect at 24. His tape is phenomenal. And
So
just
good.
the versatility to go with Eamon Worry and then you've got Julian Love as a guy who's got his own fair share of versatility. And right, the only non-versatile guy in that secondary would be Josh Jobe, who's just such a perfect scheme fit. So I really, really like this idea a lot to close us out. I'm a big fan.
Love it.
Okay.
I just think he's such a unique player because like there's other safeties that are quote unquote versatile, but how many defensive backs in this class do you know that could legitimately start at nickel, could start at either safety spot, and some teams have him graded as an outside corner? Like you just don't have that versatility in the class. So I think it's just such a safe pick as long as he stays healthy.
Yeah.
Well, we did it. And I didn't want to jinx anything, but Ryan, you said 2 hours and 5 minutes.
He did.
Man. That's it.
He did. And
Set it up.
we just didn't speak about it the whole time, but we were just pacing
I
for
kept
you.
looking. I'm like, oh, we're gonna be a little over. And then we brought it home.
I was doing it, started like an hour and 50. I'm like, man, I may have nailed this thing. I don't know. We're going to
All
see
right.
this in a few minutes.
2 questions, I think, before we wrap this up. Ty Simpson. Obviously, we didn't do trades here, but thoughts on Ty Simpson, and Kyle, you can start. Chances Ty Simpson goes in the first round, and then like to who and where?
Pretty slim. If he does, it's I think Arizona comes up with one of these teams at 26, 30, 32, does the trade up, gets the 5th-year option, gives up a mid-round pick. I think that would be the only outcome in which I see him going the first round.
Ryan?
Yeah, I agree. I think it is Arizona in a trade up if it does happen somewhere in the back end, because it's weird, man. Like in the time of year where you hear that everybody loves everybody, the only team that's been consistently connected to Ty Simpson is the Cardinals. It's just very strange vibe around that situation. So I'll say if it does happen, it would be Arizona in a trade up.
Okay. The next question, I think this is the last one. Player that did not go in our first round that you think is the other type of Traden Stokes, like this, the not Traden Stokes, but the other version of him who could slide in the last couple picks that's really not expected or ranked in any big board to be a first round prospect.
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it quick. I mentioned him on the Seattle pick. I think Chris Johnson has a good chance to go in the first round, the corner out of San Diego State. I just think he's checked so many boxes. Like he's had multi-years of experience and production. He had his best year in 2025, so I think he's still ascending. He tested incredibly well at the combine. One of the smartest people I've ever talked to in terms of from a defensive back perspective to kind of showcase where he is on the football field at all times, his responsibilities, his eye keys, like all this type of stuff. I think and I've been told that he's got great character too. So like this is one of the guys where he might not be as flashy as like Jermad and a couple of these other guys athletically. He's a guy that I just think kind of checks a lot of boxes. So Chris Johnson would be one guy for me.
I think Chris Johnson and then Chase Besantis is another one where, I thought maybe a spot for Houston at 28. I know that they seemed like they had a hit with Ed Ingram in free agency this past year, who they ran it back with, but like how much are we really going to put as far as eggs in the Wyatt Teller basket at this point in time? So I think Besantis, TJ Parker, and Chris Johnson would be the 3 names that I point to and say, I think these guys have a pretty good chance.
All right, well, that does it. Our first A to Z mega mock draft. Make sure you hit that like button. You like the show, like and follow all the channels. We're linked here on the video. And I know, Kyle, you've got football 101 plans at A to Z Sports Film Room that are coming. I've already checked out the first couple. And then Ryan, you and Joe will have a ton of draft reaction content on Best Pod Available and all of our other spots. A to Z sports.com. Keep trying that draft simulator that we have here. It'll be updated for day 2. It'll be updated for 2027's draft before you know it. So, guys, thanks for the time. Hope everybody enjoyed the show, and happy draft week.